An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel. Reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect. Thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English. Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel with your top headlines from across the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Divo Klein, and these are the latest developments coming to you live from Israel. Now, this morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu sent an official pardon request in regards to his ongoing corruption trial after Trump's visit, where the American president told Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Netanyahu. The Prime Minister was required to file an official document, a move that has now been done. Here's what the Israeli Prime Minister had to say.
התלבטתי רבות בעניין זה, אבל מה שקרה בזמן האחרון הכריע את הכף. בגלל החלטה שנובעת מהרכב השופטים הדן בתיק, אני נדרש להעיד 3 פעמים בשבוע. 3 פעמים בשבוע. זו דרישה בלתי אפשרית, שאיננה נדרשת משום אזרח אחר בישראל. כמו כן, עמדו לנגד עיניי פניותיו החוזרות ונשנות של הנשיא טראמפ לנשיא המדינה. הנשיא טראמפ קרא לסיום מיידי של המשפט, כדי שאוכל יחד איתו לקדם ביתר שאת אינטרסים חיוניים המשותפים לישראל ולארצות הברית בחלון זמנים שספק אם יחזור. אזרחי ישראל היקרים, פעם אחר פעם נבחרתי בבחירות דמוקרטיות וקיבלתי את האמון שלכם להמשיך לכהן כראש ממשלת ישראל בראש וראשונה כדי לממש יעדים היסטוריים אלה. מטעמים אלה הגישו היום עורכי דיני בקשה לחנינה לנשיא המדינה. אני מצפה שכל מי שטובת המדינה לנגד עיניו יתמוך בצעד זה.
And it is now up to the president whether to pardon Netanyahu or not, a decision which is expected to be made in the coming weeks. And the Syrian front exploded over the weekend, with the IDF now weighing a major escalation in Syria. This after new intelligence suggests that Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara's own general intelligence forces may have directly fired on Israeli troops during this weekend's operations in Beijing. What began as a routine arrest raid has now turned into one of the most dangerous incidents since Israel entered southern Syria last year. Israeli media reports say that if the IDF confirms regime involvement, the army could shift from targeted arrests to a far more aggressive strategy, including frequent, precise airstrikes to break down the growing network of terror cells near the border. This development follows a tense weekend with the IDF's 55th Brigade operating in southern Syria to apprehend 2 brothers from the Al-Jama'ah terror group. The 2 were suspected of planting explosives and helping launch a missile at Israel. The terrorists were taken into custody without resistance, but troops were met with heavy gunfire upon evacuation. A standoff erupted between local terrorists and IDF troops, leaving 6 Israelis wounded, 3 of them seriously. Drones, helicopters, and fighter jets were rushed in, striking pre-planned targets and providing cover for the extrication of the troops. Syrian media claims that 13 people were killed. Israel says only that, quote, several terrorists were eliminated. And joining me now to discuss these developments is Major in the Reserves Elliot Chodov, a political and military analyst. Elliot, thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
So let's break down this operation. What were the IDF doing in Syria in the first place, and who are the Al-Jama'ah terror group?
So first of all, the IDF moved into Syria with the collapse of the Assad regime. The border along the Golan, on the Syrian side, or what is commonly referred to as the Syrian Golan, has been problematic ever since the beginning of the civil war against Assad over a decade ago. That front essentially became the Wild West when the Assad regime was weakened in the civil war. And we've had dozens of terrorist groups along there, from Hezbollah to Al-Qaeda and everything in between. With the fall of the regime, we're seeing something of a hybrid situation. The IDF moved in for fear of that happening again. And it is happening again, except now the IDF is on the other side of the border. We're not waiting for them on our side. But it's not clear whether the entire new regime is on board with the idea that the border should be quiet. In other words, all right, Ashara says what he's saying, and I don't want to say that he's being honest or dishonest. We know that his regime is made up of essentially Al-Qaeda-style terrorists, and they are supporting, officially or unofficially, the move of terrorists close to the Israeli border. So we're pretty much in as I said, a hybrid situation of a weakened regime that's allowing terrorist groups to form along the border. And once again, everything from Hezbollah-backed groups to Jamaat al-Islamiyah, which is a Sunni group, not directly Al-Qaeda, but along the same lines of jihadism, and all sorts of other smaller local groups. Again, something we've seen in the past. Every single one of them aimed at the Israeli border, either first to strike at Israeli troops, and if they can get past, to strike at Israeli civilians.
It's very important for Israel to rely on intelligence to kind of like secure the northern border, as you're saying. But intelligence, for now at least, is indicating that these terror factions like Al-Jamaah are potentially linked to the Syrian president, who, might I remind our viewers, was sitting in the White House just a few weeks ago. Now, in this meeting in the White House, Shara said he would be open to normalization with Israel, but only through U.S. mediation. So is Trump, do you think, taking these terror factions on Israel's border into account? Is this maybe a dark truth that Israel could never have normalized ties with Syria should Israel's northern border constantly be under threat?
As long as the border is under threat, there's no normalization. Obviously, there's no such thing as a guarantee. I can use the Jordanian border as an example. The Jordanians, for decades now, have done the best they could to keep that border quiet, and they failed. But we know that they're trying. In other words, you can have normalization with a country that's doing its best and doesn't succeed 100% of the time. We don't have that case with Syria. We have, as I said earlier, at best, a weak regime that's not stopping them, and at worst, a regime that's actually supporting them. Now, Ashara says that he's willing to discuss a ceasefire and that sort of thing, and it's not clear what he means by normalization, if Israel withdraws back across the line. That's a non-starter with terrorist organizations, terrorist groups right along the border. And essentially what's happening now are two things. One, the fact that the military is across the border means that it is standing as it should be, the defense between the terrorists and the civilian population, the Israeli civilian population. And two, as we saw over the weekend, with intelligence, knowing who's behind, and the two who were captured were organizers. They weren't, the army didn't go in just to grab a couple of random terrorists. These were leaders, organizers, people who were planning further attacks, and stopping them is not simply a question of picking up a couple of suspects. It means preventing attacks into the future. So is Trump taking it into account? I imagine he is. So far, I'm not aware, and I'm not privy to everything that's going on behind closed doors, but I'm not aware of Trump putting pressure on Israel to pull out of Syria in order to make some sort of deal work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this really isn't the first time that the IDF has operated inside of Syria. So I do want to ask you now, what goes into such an operation when it comes to, intelligence, the technology, the training from a military perspective, because these are special operations. They don't occur very often. So if you could just share a little bit on that.
Sure. Well, first of all, there are two levels of intelligence. One is figuring out who the people are as in this case, the two, or it doesn't matter whether these two or any other, figuring out who the targets are. And the second level is the immediate, and this is what happened over the weekend, finding out where they are at a particular time with sufficient lead time to get an operation in there and to get them. In terms of preparation, once it's known more or less where they are, the operation that was done wasn't planned yesterday. Any decent military, and the IDF is a better than decent military by far, has already plans on paper, at least, to be able to do this kind of an operation where you simply fill in the blanks of time and place and the immediate intelligence of the moment. So how to get there, what kind of backup you need, how much force you need, how to surround it, support forces, whether it's artillery and air, and both were used in this operation, evacuation, which was also needed, unfortunately, by helicopter for the wounded. All of these things are written into a plan well in advance, and at the last moment, and last moment can be hours, not minutes, you start to fill in the blanks of these are the vehicles, these are the aircraft, this is the equipment, these are the actual routes, and so on. So it's a sort of rolling kind of thing, but it's not something that's done from 1 minute to the next.
Mm-hmm. And Elliot, in your estimation, I mean, we can't, get a guarantee on these things, but to your knowledge, do you think that the front against Syria could develop to be one of these significant fronts in this multi-front war that we are still engaged with, as we are still coming under fire, of course, on the Gaza front? We're also striking Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon. We have anti-terror operations in Judea and Samaria. We're really everywhere. Do you think that this Syria front will develop further?
First of all, it's already developed. It's a major front, and the reason it's relatively quiet is because the military is in there, the IDF is in there. Dozens, if not hundreds, of operations have taken place since the fall of the Assad regime. Most of them we don't hear about it, and we wouldn't have heard about the one this weekend if there hadn't been Israeli wounded and terrorists killed in a major firefight. So those sort of things are going on all the time. Do I think it will reach the level of Gaza or Lebanon? I don't think so, but I say that hesitantly because what we could very well see is, and it's been attempted before, an organization like Hezbollah or Hamas using Syria as a staging area, as a basing area, in order to keep IDF attention away from their home bases. And here I'm speaking specifically about Hezbollah and Lebanon. So that rather than do things across the Lebanese border, do them across the Syrian border. We've seen it in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in the future.
Absolutely. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, but Elliot Khorafona, thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving us your insights. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And on a different front, as we mentioned, this weekend, the IDF struck Hezbollah sites across southern Lebanon in a series of precision airstrikes based on real-time intelligence. The targets included weapons storage facilities and military positions. These are in violation, of course, of the ceasefire. The IDF added that Hezbollah is actively preparing attacks on Israel. These strikes come as Pope Leo is expected to arrive in Lebanon today. Ahead of his visit, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem welcomed the Pope and called on him to condemn what he called Israeli aggression. Qassem said today the group has the right to respond to Israel's killing of its military chief Ali Tabatabai in Beirut airstrike. Qassem called the airstrike a blatant aggression and warned that Hezbollah will choose the time and place to take a response. Have a listen.
والموقف الذي أعلنه في مواجهة استشهاد الشهيد السيد أبو علي رضوان الله تعالى عليه وإخوانه، هذا اعتداء سافر وجريمة موصوفة من حقنا الرد. سنحدد التوقيت لذلك. نحن نرحب بهذه الزيارة في هذه المرحلة المفصلية، وإن شاء الله تكون للحبر الأعظم المساهمة في تعميم السلام في لبنان بتحريره وإيقاف العدوان والوقوف إلى جانبه كما عودنا وإلى جانب المستضعفين.
And Pope Leo's trip to Lebanon comes following just recently his trip to Turkey. And joining me now to discuss Pope Leo's trip is David Parsons, Senior Vice President of the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. David, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
So talk to me a little bit about the significance of Pope Leo's visit to Lebanon and what it means to Lebanese Christians or to the Christians of the region in the Middle East.
Yes. Well, the Vatican has styled this as a journey of peace and unity and hope. The hope right before Christmas, the peace would be more directed, I think, towards Ukraine because he met with the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew in Istanbul and the Ukrainian Orthodox Christians, Russian Orthodox country. That's for the Vatican, a very important front. But as far as Lebanon, I think he wants to come and stand in solidarity with the not only the Catholics, but the Maronites. They are Eastern Orthodox Christians who several generations ago, swore loyalty to the Pope when the Ottoman Empire was breaking down. A lot of Muslims were persecuting them. The British came in to protect Protestants. France and the Vatican came in to protect the Catholics, some of the other Christians. And so they have the Catholic Church has a unique relationship with the Maronites in Lebanon. They're half Orthodox, half Catholic in a sense, just as the Melkites here in Israel. And I think it's very important anything he can do to strengthen the Christian presence there, give them hope, and give them courage to stand up to Hezbollah, the Sunni and Maronite alliance, Sunni Christian alliance against Hezbollah. It's a unique opportunity right now to try and really handcuff Hezbollah, try and get some of the weapons out of its hands. And I think we don't know exactly what impact the Pope's visit in Lebanon will be, but if it strengthens the Christians to stand up stronger against Hezbollah, that is good for Israel.
Absolutely. And, you're saying that the Vatican is framing this trip as this sort of peace mission. But do you agree with that assessment, or do you think that there may be, other underlying tones here?
I think actually this is his first journey as Pope is actually trying to take care of some unfilled business of his predecessor, Francis, who wanted to come to Lebanon in the wake of the Beirut bombing, where there was the huge explosion in the Beirut port. He's going there to pray. He's going to do a mass along the waterfront. Francis wanted to come, but his health and then the war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon broke out, so he wasn't able to make it. And so Pope Leo the 14th has come to try and carry out his wishes to visit and strengthen the Christians of Lebanon. He also, Pope Francis was planning to come about this time to Turkey, to Istanbul, on the anniversary, the 1700 years since the Nicaea Council, a very important council, 325 AD in church history, where provided the Nicene Creed, a profession of faith that Catholics and Orthodox Christians and many Protestants, evangelicals, can still agree with. But the Orthodox and Catholic world split in 1054. And actually, the last three popes, all the way back to John Paul, Benedict, and Francis, have all made trips to Istanbul to meet with he's the patriarch who sits in the Greek Orthodox patriarch who sits in Istanbul, and he's considered the first among equals, like the ecumenical patriarch over all the Eastern Orthodox churches. and trying to heal the rift from 1,000 years ago, and also to show some unity around the anniversary of Nicaea. That was his journey in Turkey.
It's actually very cool. But, moving just back to Lebanon, and as we reported earlier, the Hezbollah chief, Naim Qassem, and also the soundbite that we just played, he has welcomed the Pope. But Hezbollah is, as you say, a terror organization. So why is the Pope giving the chief the time of day? Why create an association with a known terrorist group? I mean, what's the incentive there?
Yeah. No, I don't think the Pope has any plans to meet with the Hezbollah chief. I think Naim Qassam is trying to inject himself into the Pope's visit in a way that tries to blur the whole tension between the Christian and Sunni Muslims who are standing against Hezbollah to disarm. I think his message is more aimed at his own audience, the Hezbollah people, and sort of saying what you need to say. But I think there was a leading Lebanese official the other day who said that Hezbollah has always argued that they need their weapons to protect the country, to protect Lebanon against Israeli aggression. And the fact is, he said, the only problem we have now is that Hezbollah has arms, which are an excuse for Israel to take them out, to hit the Hezbollah arms, so that it's become a liability for the nation of Lebanon for Hezbollah to have weapons. It was a very good, strong argument for disarming Hezbollah. It won't be easy. You need the United States, France, Western countries, Arab countries to stand with them. Hezbollah is not going to give up their weapons, but this tension, I think, will remain. But the Sunni Arab, Sunni Muslims and the Christians of Lebanon need to stand strong together against Hezbollah and their continuing attempt to hijack the country.
Absolutely. And, as you're drawing this parallel between the Christian community in Lebanon and the Christian community in Israel, that takes me to my next question. But just in Lebanon, which has the largest Christian population in the Middle East, Turkey also is home of around 200,000 to 300,000 Christians. But Israel's Christian population is also very, very large. Are we expecting the Pope to make a visit to the Holy Land? Does the Christian community in Israel even want such a visit to happen?
I don't know of their plans for his upcoming journeys, and he'd have to find a good reason to do it. I wouldn't expect it anytime soon.
But there's so many, holy sites in Israel, and
Yes.
that Israel is responsible for preserving. And, I think that the point that you were making earlier of, strengthening the Christian community and the Sunni Muslim community in Lebanon is about standing strong and standing together. And if we can draw this parallel between the communities, we can deliver strength. So would some sort of visit strengthen the community in Israel as well, or would it actually have the opposite effect, considering the Pope's somewhat neutral, somewhat controversial stance in Israel's war in Gaza the past 2 years?
I think we need to, we've got a ceasefire in Gaza, ceasefire in Lebanon, and yet it's one-sided, there's still attacks. I don't think the Pope is going to visit under these circumstances. The Christians of Israel, it is the only Christian community in the whole region that is actually growing in real terms. The Lebanese have the highest percentage of its population are Christians. There's a large Coptic population in Egypt, and they all need the support of the Western world. We see what's happening in Nigeria and elsewhere, sort of in a way triggered by the October 7 terror attacks. Christians are vulnerable throughout this region, and Israel needs to do what they can stand up to stand up for them, but also the West, the Trump administration and others because there does seem be a frustration among a lot of these radical Islamic terrorist elements that they can't really destroy Israel. They can't deal a big enough blow, so they're going to go take it out on some of the Christian populations. And we see that horribly in Nigeria and Sudan and some other places right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some really tough images coming out of there. And David, we are almost out of time, but just while I have you on, I'd like to ask you one last question. As Christmas is coming up, it's right around the corner, and we know Jerusalem is famous for all of the trees and the lights, and it's incredibly festive, especially in the Christian quarter. What can we expect from Jerusalem this Christmas year round?
Well, there are different parts of Jerusalem where, Christmas decorations go up. The city puts up sort of winter festival decorations, so it all looks festive. But I think the more important question right now is, are the Christian tourists going to start coming back in large numbers and visit Bethlehem? Bethlehem has been sort of locked down for 2 years now. High unemployment, a lot of despondency, and they need the Christians to start returning and visiting there. And so, we are in a much quieter period right now, but I don't know if it's quite enough for large numbers of Christians to come to Bethlehem. It'd be nice if they could for Christmas.
We all pray for a quieter time so we have more Christian visitors, but that is the time that we have for today. David Parsons, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. God bless.
And in slightly different news, we've been reporting on the IDF's anti-terror operations in Judea and Samaria. Well, the operation is now concluded, with the IDF and Shin Bet withdrawing from the city of Tubas in Samaria. After a long counterterrorism operation, the IDF have detained about 200 Palestinians, with 10 still in custody. Hundreds of buildings were raided and weapons were found and confiscated. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has met with the family of the final Israeli hostage, whose body is still being held in Gaza. He is, of course, Staff Sergeant Major Ran Gvili. Hamas is reportedly still searching for his body, but he has not been found as of yet. And the meeting between the Prime Minister and Ran Gvili's family included a briefing on Israel's efforts to bring Ran back. This, of course, as thousands gathered last night in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square to rally for the remaining hostages, Gvili and the Thai national Suttisak Rintalak. Protesters held their banners high, demanding that the government do more to ensure the return of the final hostages' bodies. Let's take a listen to Ruby Chen and what he had to say.
We will continue on a week-to-week basis, think what is the best alternative and actions in order to bring back Ran Gvili and the Thai citizen Ran Tilak, in order to keep the pressure and the awareness on the topic. We will keep doing these types of demonstrations, rallies in different parts of Israel. And we always said from the beginning, all for one, one for all. And we will continue to do so until we get those two remaining hostages back to their families.
Absolutely. And under the U.S. mediated agreement to end the war in Gaza and release the hostages, Hamas released 20 living hostages and was supposed to release the 28 deceased hostages, but have not yet complied with this requirement, and they have yet to return the remains of 2 people. And on a slightly more positive note, the recently released Yosef Chaim Ochana, who spent 2 years in Hamas captivity, has now been dispatched from the Kfar Maccabiah Rehabilitation Center. He was obviously brought there to recover after 2 excruciating years in Hamas captivity. He is now set to return to his home in Kiryat Malachi, where he lives. This is an incredible sight to see, the blue and white flags waving behind him as he says a prayer. It's absolutely stunning. And just before we wrap up, we have a quick message from our partners at Blessed by Israel. Take a look. As the world moves to boycott Israel, the people working to restore life to the biblical heartland face daily challenges. Blessed by Israel offers a simple way to support these efforts by bringing unique and beautiful products from Judea and Samaria directly to you. From the hilltops of God's land to your home, you can find exceptional items crafted by families and small businesses in the heart of Israel. With US-based warehouses, Blessed by Israel ensures affordable prices and fast delivery. Choose from a range of products, including skincare, artisan flowers and foods, olive oil, tahini, honey, and much more. For this edition of ILTV on the Hour, for all of your updates coming out of Israel, I'm Devo Klein. Thanks so much for joining us for this update, and I hope to see you soon.
Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
The IDF is vowing to track down and eliminate every last Hamas fighter still hiding underground on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line. Troops are destroying tunnels, striking targets, and flushing terrorists out of their last hiding spots. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
For weeks, combat teams from the Nachal and Golani brigades under the Gaza division have been operating deep inside Rafah, destroying tunnels, striking targets, and flushing terrorists out of their last hiding spots. IDF engineers, together with Yahalom, have encircled multiple underground routes, collapsing hundreds of meters of tunnels and crushing the infrastructure above ground. In just the past week, more than 60 targets were hit, including 15 shafts and 40 buildings used by Hamas. Inside these areas, troops found rifles, explosives, magazines, and stockpiles of weaponry, proof of a terror network still operating beneath Rafah. Commanders say dozens of Hamas operatives remain trapped since the collapse of the previous truce, led by a battalion commander and company commanders. They are running out of food, running out of air, and running out of time. Some emerge from the tunnels desperate for supplies and are immediately targeted.
אנחנו נלחמים פה בצוות קרב משולב, גם רקם, גם חי"ר וכוחות איסוף ואוויר. כשהמטרה המרכזית היא איתור האויב והשמדתו או כניעה שלו. אלה שתי המשימות המרכזיות שיש לנו במרחב. במהלך השבועות האחרונים היה לנו התקלות עם 4 מחבלים, ומה שקרה אתמול, 17 מחבלים יוצאים במרחב גזרת הצקח של הנחל, ויחד עם כוחות של גדוד 12 מושמדים וחלקם נשבים. אנחנו ממשיכים במשימות עד שנעצור אותם, עד הניצחון.
Just last week, troops eliminated 4 operatives who broke above ground. Over the weekend, 17 more terrorists crawled out of 2 tunnel routes. 11 were killed in intense fire exchanges, and 6 were captured for interrogation. Today, the IDF says 2 more terror operatives were killed after crossing the Yellow Line in northern Gaza, approaching troops of the 188th Armored Brigade and reservists of the Carmeli Brigade, posing an immediate threat. Earlier, the Israeli Air Force struck 3 operatives in southern Gaza who had attempted to approach troops. The IDF remains deployed across Gaza to remove any immediate threat under the current ceasefire agreement.
When joining us now for more is Reserves Major General Yaakov Amidror. He's the former head of Israel's National Security Council. He's now with the Ginza Strategic Center. General Amidror, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we should be, of course, immensely grateful. Another hostage returned. Almost all the hostages are now back. In theory, that should be now leading Gaza from phase 1 of the agreement into phase 2. We know on paper what that's supposed to look like, but based on what is actually happening in Gaza and in the region, how do you think it's going to develop in the next few weeks?
I think that the Americans will continue their efforts to organize forces that will come into Gaza to do what is needed according to the plan to disarm Hamas and to begin the rebuilding of Gaza. First of all, to understand what is the situation and then to make some preparations and plans. I think that they are too optimistic. I don't see the countries which will be ready to send their forces to fight Hamas. I don't see Hamas ready to disarm itself. It is true that if you would ask the same question a few months ago, I probably, my answer was very pessimistic about the ability of the Americans to convince Hamas to release the hostages, and it happened. So we have to be very careful. As far as we can understand the situation today, the Americans didn't succeed to move Hamas towards any agreement about disarming them. And without such an agreement, I don't know who will do the job.
Well, in the meantime, there has been a situation that's developed with one half of the Gaza Strip in Israel in the IDF's hands, another in a resurgent Hamas. We see Hamas reasserting itself in that area of Gaza. Is that a status quo that Israel and the IDF can live with, can maintain?
Israel can maintain it if no hostages in the hands of Hamas. The IDF is a buffer between Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Gaza envelope population. From our point of view, we can continue for a long time. There is no any pressure on Israel in this situation. We are in a good position to defend ourselves, to defend the people around Gaza. Hamas is separated from Egypt. They cannot smuggle in a weapon system. They cannot continue to produce inside Gaza. They lost their ability to produce in Gaza. Yes, they can recruit more members to the organization. They can train them. They can prepare more explosives and traps for the IDF in the future. Hamas will be stronger, but not in a level which will stop the IDF if the IDF decide to go and to take control of this area where Hamas is now. So from that point of view, this situation, Israel is not any under pressure, but I think that the Americans are under pressure because the more time Hamas is holding the area, less are the chances to convince the organization to be disarmed. And the suffering of the people in Gaza is enormous. I mean, to live in these circumstances under the control of this organization, it's a nightmare. And I think that the Americans understand it, the Arab countries understand it. And I will not be surprised if the end of the day, the Americans and others, some on the table, some under the table, will tell us, you know what, do the job and destroy Hamas. And we will have to resume the war in Gaza.
Resume the war in Gaza, and there is a similar situation seems to be developing on the northern front with Lebanon. Again, the question is, who is going to disarm Hezbollah according to the terms of that agreement? So are we basically looking at a return to potentially a multi-front war in the either near or certainly coming future?
The situation in the north is a different situation because there is a government, there is an address of responsibility inside Lebanon, unlike Gaza, in which Hamas is the top organization. It is the body which is governing the Gaza Strip. So in Lebanon, the situation is a different one. But yes, it might come at the end to a situation in which the Americans and maybe even the Lebanese government under the table will tell us, guys, we don't know how to do it. We cannot do it. Do whatever you can, and we will have to take care for Hezbollah. It's a different kind of a war. Now there is no any threat from land forces towards our settlements in the north. It will be probably almost totally Air Force operation against facilities and capabilities of Hezbollah. It is not two front. It is one front, probably totally Air Force operation, and the other one will be with huge land forces, ground forces going into Gaza. And remember that unlike what happened in Lebanon 2 years ago, year and a half ago, today Syria is a country which is hostile to Hezbollah in Lebanon.
All right, Yaakov Amidror, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
According to new assessments, Iran has already restored most of the missile stockpile destroyed by Israel during June's 12-day war and is now reportedly quickly approaching its pre-war inventory.
Israeli media reports Tehran is on track to field around 2,000 surface-to-surface missiles capable of hitting Israel within just months. Part of Iran's arsenal survived Israel's strikes by being hidden in deep underground tunnel networks, and since the war, Iran has worked around the clock to replenish the rest. During the June conflict, Iran fired over 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 attack drones toward Israel. Another 1,000 missiles and 250 launchers were destroyed on the ground by Israeli forces. But intelligence officials warn Iran's next war plan is far more dangerous. Tehran supposedly intends to launch up to 2,000 missiles simultaneously, a saturation strike designed to overwhelm Israel's air defenses. While Iran apparently has not resumed uranium enrichment to previous high levels, it is rebuilding damaged nuclear infrastructure, including new fortified sites, among them a secretive facility nicknamed Pickaxe Mountain. Analysts say the combination of nuclear reconstruction and rapid missile replenishment signals a long-term Iranian strategy: recover, expand, and prepare for the next confrontation. Israeli defense officials now warn that any future war with Iran will be longer, harder, and broader, likely extending to Iranian-backed militias in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has ordered a new program to protect Israel's air superiority, increase long-range strike readiness, and prevent Iran from further advancing its missile and nuclear projects. Israel sees Iran's rapid rearmament not as routine military recovery, but as a direct countdown. A rebuilt Iranian missile force means the next war may not just be inevitable, but far more devastating than the last.
And now, with this dramatic escalation in Beirut, where Israel's targeted strike has eliminated Hezbollah's de facto military chief and has prompted Lebanon to call for international intervention, I am now joined by Hussein Abdul Hussein, research fellow at FDD. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Israel eliminated Ali Tabatabai, Hezbollah's military chief, in the heart of Beirut. How significant is this assassination? We know he's been on the U.S. wanted list as well.
I think the top significance is that Hezbollah has been claiming that since the war stopped, it has changed its mode of operation, that it has weeded out all the spies in its midst, that Israel does not have any insight into how the organization is rebuilding itself. I think by taking out the top military guy, we know that all of these Hezbollah claims are just claims. Hezbollah is rebuilding itself, but it's still vulnerable to Israeli attacks.
Now, the IDF says this was a precise strike under direct orders from Netanyahu. Why do you think Israel would choose to strike inside Beirut now and in such a high-profile way, despite the fragile ceasefire that was in place?
Like Prime Minister Netanyahu said, Lebanon is not living up to its promise and its commitment that it signed in the cessation of hostilities last November. And if Lebanon is not going to do what it promised to do, that is to disarm Hezbollah, then someone else will have to do it. And this someone else happens to be Israel. So one of the sides or the parties will have to uphold UN Security Council Resolution 1701, the cessation of hostilities deal between the two sides. And the Lebanese, unfortunately, even though they promised and signed on it, they're not doing it. So Israel is stepping up, and at whatever cost. I think, Israel has to do what Israel has to do at this point.
From a military standpoint, how severely does this weaken Hezbollah's operational chain of command?
It does significantly. Apparently, this guy had some sort of talent that they deployed him to Yemen and to Syria. So his military expertise seems to have been vast. But this does not take out the whole chain of command. Of course, the chain of command was weakened in the last war between the two sides. But I think there are still a lot of Hezbollah generals that remain at large. And maybe Israel is still after them. But the organization still has the ability to wage war against Israel, which must keep this low-intensity war going between the two sides until, of course, as we said, the Lebanese state steps up and disarms Hezbollah.
So we're hearing the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, is asking for global action against the Israeli attacks. What is likely to happen next, do you think?
I think Lebanon lost credibility with the United States and with the global community. Lebanon promises things and it doesn't live up to them, and that's a big problem. And they go by the same template. They have changed the sequence of steps, the order of things. The agreement and the cessation of hostilities was Hezbollah to be disarmed, then Israel stops policing Hezbollah, and Israel withdraws from the 5 hilltops. Now the Lebanese are demanding that Israel stops policing first and withdraws from the hilltop, and then they might or might not disarm Hezbollah. This is not in the agreement. Everyone knows it. Washington knows it. And I think at this point, even the relationship, which was friendly between Washington and Beirut until very recently, has become sour. We've just seen Washington cancel all the meetings of the Lebanese army commander who was visiting Washington. So I don't think world capitals are taking Beirut's statements for real this time.
But where does this leave Lebanon's government? Can Beirut realistically disarm Hezbollah as Netanyahu demands, or is that simply impossible given Hezbollah's power in the country?
The Lebanese government has been as wily, as mercurial as possible on this. On one hand, they say that the Lebanese army does not have the capabilities to take on Hezbollah. And then when the United States approves $200 million in aid to the Lebanese armed forces, then President Aoun says, if we take on Hezbollah, there'll be civil war. So they're not sure which excuse they're trying to use, but what we know for sure is that there's no will to take on Hezbollah. Maybe they prefer that Hezbollah does it, which is not really that good anyway. But what we know for sure is that Lebanon is not moving on Hezbollah. And like I said, if they don't do, someone else will have to do it. And this someone happens to be Israel.
Hussein Abdul Hussein, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Israel has approved a new plan to bring the remaining members of India's Bnei Menashe community to Israel by 2030. The group identifies as descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, and they are among India's last Jewish communities. Our correspondent, India Naftali, has the details.
Israel's government has now approved a 5-year plan to bring the majority of the remaining Bnei Menashe community from India to Israel. The decision, submitted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Aliyah and Integration Minister Ophir Sofer, will enable about 5,800 community members to make Aliyah by the year 2030. Around 1,200 are expected to arrive by the end of 2026. There are currently an estimated 5,000 Bnei Menashe already living in Israel, most having arrived over the past 2 decades under previous government initiatives. The Bnei Menashe live primarily in the northeastern Indian states of Mizoram and Manipur, within the Kuki-Chin and Mizo communities. They are descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and are considered among India's last remaining Jewish communities. Under the plan, all new arrivals will undergo Orthodox conversion through the chief rabbinate. They will mainly settle in the north of the country, part of a broader effort to rebuild and strengthen the communities of the Galilee region following the war. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the move an important and Zionist decision, saying it will provide a boost to the north and help reunite families long divided between India and Israel. Aliyah Minister Sofer praised the decision as part of a wider wave of immigration in recent years, saying this Aliyah strengthens Israel's resilience, solidarity, and national renewal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the move marks a renewed connection of brothers who have carried the yearning for Zion for generations. A government delegation is set to travel to India within days to begin processing applications. The operation will be coordinated by the Chief Rabbinate, the Conversion Authority, the Population and Immigration Authority, the Foreign Ministry, and the Jewish Agency. The first phase of the plan is budgeted at 90 million shekels through 2026. The funds will cover immigration costs, conversion, housing and absorption centers, Hebrew language programs, and employment support, helping the new arrivals integrate smoothly into their communities in the north.
And so, as Israel approves this landmark plan to bring the entire Bnei Menashe community home by 2030, we are now joined by India Naftali to discuss this issue here in studio. Thanks for joining us, India.
Thank you so much, Sivan.
So let's, to begin, understand, for viewers less familiar with this whole, with this community, who are the Bnei Menashe? What is their story?
So the Bnei Menashe are a Jewish community located in northeast India. They come from the tribe of Manasseh. They were in the land of Israel 2,700 years ago. They were exiled by the Assyrians, and they've been out of the land of Israel ever since. So for generations, they've been keeping Jewish customs and laws, keeping Shabbat, Jewish purity rituals, and that is really their claim to Judaism. They're one of the 10 lost tribes, and they're about a population of 10,000. They're part of India's very small Jewish population.
And now, what does this decision actually mean? How significant is it that Israel has now committed to bringing the entire Bnei Menashe community, roughly 6,000 people, by the end of the decade?
So this is historic, Sivan. I mean, this is the first time that the government has ever approved such a large mass aliyah. If we talk about the aliyah of the Ethiopian Jews, they were brought in several operations and waves. And this framework that's happening with the Bnei Menashe to bring the remaining roughly 6,000 that are in India, it's happening in one go, in one framework. So this is the first time. There's going to be families that have been separated for 20 years who haven't been able to make aliyah, that have been in India, and who are now going to be reunited with the roughly 5,000 Bnei Menashe community members here in Israel. Now, for you to understand, I mentioned in my piece that they're going to have to go through a conversion process, a Orthodox Jewish conversion process. So you might ask yourself, if they're Jewish, why would they have to go through that process?
Right.
Well, the answer is this. So because they've been exiled so long in the diaspora for over 2,000 years, the Judaism they practice isn't exactly the same as rabbinical Judaism, which was created after the destruction of the first temple, and they left right around that time of the destruction of the first temple. So the Judaism they practice is from that time era, and as we know, that rabbinical Judaism was created afterwards. So now that we're going to see them. That their Judaism aligns with rabbinical Judaism that is considered halakha here in Israel.
Halakha, Jewish law here in Israel. So to make sure that everyone is aligned.
In the same practice of Judaism.
None of us are really 100% aligned,
That's
but
right.
More or less. All right, so the state delegation is flying to India within days, and the government allocated 90 million shekels for this first phase, covering conversion and housing and Hebrew education and integration. What challenges do you think that the state will face in absorbing such a large wave of immigrants?
Certainly the question of education. A lot of them come from communities where they don't have traditional education, so coming and finding job placement might be a difficult issue. But like you said, 90 million shekels is a huge pledge to make sure that these new members of our society have a smooth landing, and it's going to be invested in hopefully education, definitely housing, and they already have quite a significant community here to welcome them and show them the ropes.
And what are some of the actual community members saying about this big move?
Sivan, I know people who it's been their entire life's work for the past 20 years to bring this piece of the diaspora home to Israel. So for them, this is a completion of their life's dream. I mean, this is just the beginning of a historic moment of really bringing all Jews from across the world home to Israel.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, it will be incredible to see this new wave of aliyah of immigration coming to Israel, integrating, absorbing, and joining the Israeli public here in Israel, the Holy Land. Thank you very much, India Naftali.
Thank you, Sivan.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at ILTV.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.
Well, Israel loses billions of shekels every year, not to war or infrastructure, but to food being thrown away. A new report shows the country has lost more than $57 billion in food value over the last decade alone. Our correspondent, India Naftali, reports on the scale of the crisis and the solutions already underway.
Israelis threw away billions of dollars of food in the last decade. This is especially concerning considering how many families in the country suffer with food insecurity. The new food waste report shows how much money and nutritious food is being lost every single year. But it also shows that the tools to fix the problem already exist. The 10th annual Food Waste and Rescue Report from BDO and Leket Israel, the country's national food bank, shows Israel has lost about $57 billion in food value over the past decade. The report, prepared with the Ministries of Environmental Protection and Health, warns that food loss remains one of Israel's most expensive problems. However, this year's report does show a positive trend. Israeli consumers are wasting less food, a drop of 13.3% per person. But with population growth and rising living costs, the total volume of waste remains very high. Food waste affects Israel in 3 major ways. In 2024 alone, Israel threw away 2.6 million tons of food, worth about $7 billion. That is nearly 40% of the country's entire food production and equal to 1.3% of the national GDP. Socially, it makes life hard for families who already struggle to afford healthy food. The average Israeli family discarded about $2,915 worth of food last year. Meanwhile, 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Health costs associated with food insecurity are even higher, reaching about $1.57 billion a year. These costs include chronic illnesses such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, and other conditions linked to poor nutrition. And environmentally, food waste uses water, land, and energy that cannot be recovered, costing Israel about $1.14 billion annually in lost resources and pollution. But Israel has built a strong foundation for change to reduce food waste in places like restaurants, army bases, farms, or at home. These solutions include expanding food rescue operations in farms and supermarkets, using the Food Donation Act to increase safe donations, and implementing the national plan that sets targets for cutting waste and redirecting surplus food to families in need. Leket has also been working with government ministries, pushing for new laws and helping shape the national plan. They say the next step is to keep the momentum going so these plans turn into real, large-scale change, because the level of waste is still far too high. These plans are expected to save billions and support lower and middle-income families. Leket says Israel already has a scalable system for food rescue. What it needs now, they say, is funding, coordination, and national commitment. Their goal is an Israel where food isn't thrown away while families go hungry.
Well, as we move forward here at ILTV, we're not just delivering the news, we're carrying out a mission. Every day we work to strengthen Israel's global voice and stand firm for Zionism with factual pro-Israel reporting. By subscribing to our app, you're joining us as a partner in this mission, and you'll get access to our new 24/7 channel with live broadcasts at the top of every hour. Scan the QR code on your screen to subscribe now.
Well, Israel's food scene just scored a major international win. Despite years of war and demand to boycott Israeli businesses, 8 Israeli restaurants have been named among the top 1,000 in the world by the French restaurant guide La Liste. It's one of the most respected global gastronomic rankings. Our correspondent, India Naftali, shows us why Israel's culinary scene continues to thrive against all odds.
I'm standing here outside OCD Tel Aviv that was recently ranked as one of the top 1,000 restaurants in the entire world. And for such a small country like Israel, to secure 8 out of the 1,000 best restaurants in the world is quite impressive. The war has taken a toll on Israel's restaurant industry, but daily life continues. In the evenings, the streets are still busy and restaurants are full. Israel's food scene has always been built on a blend of North African, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean flavors. It's a reflection of Jewish diaspora traditions and a cutting-edge fusion movement that has taken hold of the Israeli restaurant industry in the recent years. Now, that mix is earning global praise. Despite years of war that shook the restaurant industry, 8 Israeli restaurants have been ranked among La Liste's top 1,000 restaurants in the world. 7 are in Tel Aviv, and 1 is in Jerusalem. Leading Israel's lineup is OCD Tel Aviv. It's a tasting menu restaurant by chef Raz Rahav, which received the highest ranking in the country. Next is Mashia, known for its fresh local ingredients and modern use of spices.
Right behind it is a restaurant called Elena at the Norman Hotel, run by chefs Daniel Zur and Omer Shadmi. Other Tel Aviv favorites also made the list: Manta Ray, a beachfront seafood classic, Claro, a farm-to-table restaurant, and Pastel, led by chef Gal Ben Moshe at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. Jerusalem also claimed a spot with Chakra, a 25-year fixture of the capital's food scene. The final Israeli entry is Popina in the Neve Tzedek neighborhood in Tel Aviv, where the menu is built around 5 cooking techniques, from curing to slow cooking. For Israel, this year's recognition means something more. It is a reminder that even in difficult times, its culinary talent continues to innovate, inspire, and draw the world's attention.
To ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Devo Klein, and here is your roundup of all of the latest developments coming out of Israel. This morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu sent an official pardon request in regards to his ongoing corruption trial. After Trump's visit, where the American president told Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Netanyahu, the Prime Minister was required to file an official document, a move that has now been completed. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
התלבטתי רבות בעניין זה, אבל מה שקרה בזמן האחרון הכריע את הכף. בגלל החלטה שנובעת מהרכב השופטים הדן בתיק, אני נדרש להעיד 3 פעמים בשבוע. 3 פעמים בשבוע. זו דרישה בלתי אפשרית שאיננה נדרשת משום אזרח אחר בישראל. כמו כן, עמדו לנגד עיניי פניותיו החוזרות ונשנות של הנשיא טראמפ לנשיא המדינה. הנשיא טראמפ קרא לסיום מיידי של המשפט, כדי שאוכל יחד איתו לקדם ביתר שאת אינטרסים חיוניים המשותפים לישראל ולארצות הברית בחלון זמנים שספק אם יחזור. אזרחי ישראל היקרים, פעם אחר פעם נבחרתי בבחירות דמוקרטיות וקיבלתי את האמון שלכם להמשיך לכהן כראש ממשלת ישראל בראש וראשונה, כדי לממש יעדים היסטוריים אלה. מטעמים אלה הגישו היום עורכי דיני בקשה לחנינה לנשיא המדינה. אני מצפה שכל מי שטובת המדינה לנגד עיניו יתמוך בצעד זה.
And it is now up to the president whether to pardon Netanyahu or not, a decision which is expected to be made in the coming weeks. And the Syrian front exploded over the weekend, with the IDF now weighing a major escalation in Syria. This after new intelligence suggests that Syrian President Ahmed al-Shaara's own general intelligence forces may have directly fired on Israeli troops during this weekend's operations in Bet Jin. What began as a routine arrest raid has now turned into one of the most dangerous incidents since Israel entered southern Syria last year. Israeli media reports say that if the IDF confirms regime involvement, the army could shift from targeted arrests to a far more aggressive strategy, including frequent precise airstrikes to break the growing networks of terror cells near the border. This development follows a tense weekend with the IDF's 55th Brigade operating in southern Syria to apprehend 2 brothers from the Al-Jama'ah terror group. The 2 terrorists were taken into custody without resistance, but troops were met with heavy gunfire upon evacuation. A standoff erupted between local terrorists and IDF troops, leaving 6 Israelis wounded, 3 of them in serious condition. Drones, helicopters, and fighter jets were pushed in, striking pre-planned targets and providing cover for the extrication of the troops. Syria media claims that 13 people were killed in the incident. And on a different front, this weekend, the IDF struck Hezbollah sites across southern Lebanon in a series of precision airstrikes based on real-time intelligence. The targets included weapons storage facilities and military positions in violation of the ceasefire. The IDF added that Hezbollah is actively preparing attacks on Israel. These strikes come as Pope Leo is expected to arrive in Lebanon today. Ahead of his visit, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem welcomed the Pope and called on him to condemn what he called Israeli aggression. Qassem said today the group, quote, has the right to respond to Israel's killing of its military chief Ali Tabatabai in Beirut airstrike. Qassem called the strike a blatant aggression and warned that Hezbollah will choose the time and the place of its response. And we have a quick report that the anti-terror operations in Judea and Samaria have wrapped up with 200 Palestinians being arrested and in custody of the IDF. Weapons have been found and confiscated. And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, and thanks so much for joining us for this update.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I am Steve Leibowitz, and coming up in today's newscast, Hamas continues violating the ceasefire as reports indicate the terror group is regaining control in Gaza. IDF and border police crack down on terror cells in northern Samaria. And an elaborate Iranian plot thwarted by Mossad intelligence in Africa. Amid the continuing ceasefire, the IDF said it has eliminated 3 terror operatives in 2 separate areas of the Gaza Strip after they crossed the yellow line and threatened Israeli forces. At the same time, Israeli security analysts are warning that the ceasefire is allowing Hamas to return to power. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
In the south of Gaza, troops of the Kfir Brigade spotted a Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative on the Israeli side of the yellow line. The IDF says he posed an immediate threat, and Air Force strikes killed him within minutes. A short time later, surveillance teams identified another terrorist approaching troops in southern Gaza. Soldiers of the Gaza Division's Southern Brigade opened fire and eliminated him. And in the north, the Air Force struck and killed a Hamas operative who the IDF says was preparing an imminent sniper attack against Israeli troops, publishing videos of the strike. The IDF says all 3 killings were necessary to remove active threats to soldiers operating under the ceasefire framework. Israel is reportedly offering a way out for dozens of Hamas fighters still trapped in tunnels under eastern Rafah. According to the Hebrew media, a proposal was sent through mediators: surrender, disarm, move to Israeli prisons, and later be released to Hamas-controlled Gaza. So far, the gunmen are refusing, some emerging only to flee or attack IDF troops, and it's unclear at this point if Hamas leaders can even reach them. An Israeli official said, quote, "We gave them the option to live. They have not agreed." Meanwhile, a sharp warning is coming from Israel's defense establishment. Hamas is quietly rebuilding its rule in the Gaza Strip, much faster than many in the cabinet have realized. Senior defense officials told ministers that 13 of Gaza's 25 municipalities are back to full activity, once again run by Hamas. Hamas police are redeployed at checkpoints, infrastructure is being repaired, and security sources say the organization has re-established its control in the minds of Gazans. Reports also confirm that Hamas has resumed checkpoint operations and is back to collecting taxes from truck drivers, just as it did before the war. This rapid rebuilding is viewed differently in Jerusalem and in Washington, as the Trump administration is pushing ahead with the next phase of its 20-point plan for Gaza's day after, even as Israel warns that Hamas remains armed, entrenched, and deeply involved in local decision-making.
The IDF is continuing its broad counter-terror operation in northern Samaria. Troops detained dozens of suspects while searching for weapons in the Tubas area after detecting efforts by terror groups to establish a presence there. The raids are underway in several Palestinian towns and villages, including Tubas, Tamun, and Al-Aqaba. Palestinian media reports that a curfew was imposed in the area and several roads were blocked.
فرضوا السيطرة وأحكموا السيطرة على كل المناطق الجغرافية في محافظة طوباس، وتحديدا في طمون تم إخلاء عشرات المنازل ونكلوا بأصحابها وقاموا بعمل ثكنات عسكرية في كل البنايات المرتفعة في محافظة طوباس سواء طوباس أو طمون، وما زالت العملية مستمرة.
The operation is being carried out by the equivalent of 3 IDF brigades and includes forces from the Commando Brigade and Samaria and Menashe regional brigades alongside border police officers. Israeli Air Force helicopters were also deployed amid the operation, with the IDF reporting that strikes were carried out before the troops entered the towns to isolate the area and cordon it off. After the airstrikes, troops began searching dozens of buildings and interrogating suspects in the towns, searching for terror operatives and weapons. According to preliminary reports, the IDF and Shin Bet arrested or questioned 60 people. Among those detained and later released was Samir Basharat, the mayor of Tamun. The operation was expected to last several days, similar to other operations in Palestinian villages over the past 2 years. Unlike those raids, the IDF is not expected to order widespread civilian evacuations. And I'm joined now by the Director of Research at the Israel Defense and Security Forum, Or Issacharov. Thanks for being with us. I'd like to touch on several fronts, but starting with Gaza.
Good to be with you.
Our troops are deployed along the Yellow Line. There are almost daily local deadly clashes, especially in Rafah. At the same time, there are reports that Hamas is reasserting civil control to most of the towns and cities in Gaza. Is the ceasefire eroding our ability to strike forcefully, or are we resigned to the U.S. basically making the decisions on the ground, including the maintenance of the ceasefire?
Well, look, I don't think it's a binary choice between these two. The ceasefire terms are very clear. The 20-point plan is online, and anyone can see it. And it explicitly says that Gaza needs to be demilitarized and Hamas needs to give up control over Gaza. It is very clear. And the point of these international forces is exactly to do exactly that. I personally doubt their ability to do that, and that's why we estimated already in IDSF that at some form we'll have to go back to resume the fighting, given that no Turkish, Qatari, Azeri, or Indonesian force will actually force Hamas to demilitarize. And, when I listen to officials in both Israeli and American administrations, it seems like they understand that. And the question is, what conditions will bring both Israel and the U.S. to realize that in the Gaza Strip there will be no other choice but to finish off Hamas with the IDF military force. I'm assuming that they want to let it happen, as in they want these forces to prove that Hamas will not be demilitarized in any other way. And let's see what the next steps will be. But this is absolutely the objective, and I don't think it has been changed.
Not terribly optimistic. Well, let's turn to Lebanon. We just reached a year of ceasefire, and Hezbollah is trying to rebuild. There have been over 700 Israeli strikes into Lebanon during the past year, with Israel citing ceasefire violations all the way through. Hezbollah is reportedly planning to retaliate for last week's attack that killed the Hezbollah chief of staff. Are we expecting another major round of fighting?
We should always be prepared. I think the main lesson from October 7 and the ensuing multi-front war is that Israel has always to prepare for a maximalist scenario. As you know, in IDSF already alerted in 2022 in our strategic assessment against the option of a multi-front war, and very sadly, it started on October 7, 2023. I don't think Hezbollah understands the terms of the ceasefire. The ceasefire was very clear. If Hezbollah obtains weapons, it is considered a violation of a ceasefire. And if American sources are to be believed, Iran wired Hezbollah over $1 billion, and Hezbollah is feverishly attempting to rehabilitate its stockpile of weapons. And so Israel is free to act in Lebanon per the terms of the ceasefire, and the Lebanese government decided to disarm Hezbollah. So these are terms that are not up to discussion. And Hezbollah is a terrorist group funded by Iran. It is its interest to keep on fighting and killing Israeli civilians. And it is to be seen in what way will Israel and the international community arrive at the conclusion that Hezbollah has to be finished off once and for all. They got a very severe blow last year and during the war in Lebanon, and I sure hope we won't have to do it, and that the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people will understand that they have to really spew out this terrorist group that has been demolishing Lebanon for decades.
So many fronts in so little time. Well, Israel has launched yet another anti-terror operation, this time in Samaria. There are sweeps and curfews and many arrests. What is Israel trying to accomplish in Judea and Samaria? Is there any end game in sight? Are we at least eyeing some kind of a potential ceasefire for Judea and Samaria as well?
Well, I wouldn't be that optimistic over there, but I would say that Israel has, in my view, yet to decide. And that's unfortunate, because what we expect is a clear endgame to Judea and Samaria as well. As you know, when Israel doesn't decide, it leaves a vacuum that lets other international forces slip in. And we saw it in the September recognition of a Palestinian state by some European nations and nations around the world. Israel right now with this operation is attempting to really arrest and forestall all of these planned terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians. Some of them are Iranian backed and Iranian directed. And some of them are not. But Israel's endgame in Judea and Samaria is yet to be revealed. We offered the Emirates plan as one solution to disperse and divide the power of the Palestinian Authority between local governors and to enact the Israeli law on the entire rest of the territory. And that's something that in the statehood level needs to be decided. And I'm assuming that because of all the attention that Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and other fronts were getting, Judea and Samaria was kept in low flame until such time that we have to deal with it. My strong suggestion is to deal with it sooner than later and come sooner than the next unforeseen crisis, because the situation in Judea and Samaria is not stable, and we absolutely have to change fundamentally the political architecture of that region.
Oris Sakharov, so many fronts in so little time. Thank you so much for being with us today at ILTV.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you.
As we move forward here at ILTV, we're not just delivering the news, we're carrying out a mission. Every day we work to strengthen Israel's global voice and stand firm for Zionism with factual pro-Israel reporting. By subscribing to our app, you're joining us as a partner in this mission, and you'll get access to our new 24/7 channel with live broadcasts at the top of every hour. And today we're having a special Black Friday discount of 30%. Scan the QR code and use code BLACK30 to subscribe now. 2 National Guardsmen are in critical condition after being shot near the White House in Washington, D.C., in what police are calling a targeted ambush. President Trump has called it an act of terrorism and ordered beefed-up security in the U.S. Capitol. ILTV's Devil Klein has more.
Authorities say the shooter, a 29-year-old Afghan national, opened fire at close range. Other guardsmen immediately responded, subdued the suspect, who was hospitalized with serious wounds, and took him into custody. The shooting occurred only blocks away from the White House, with shell casings being recovered and camera footage under review. The White House complex was briefly on lockdown. Flights to nearby Reagan National Airport have halted, and President Trump called it an act of terror. He then ordered 500 additional National Guard troops to Washington in response. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar posted that he is shocked and deeply saddened, expressing solidarity with the United States, the American people, and President Trump. Investigations continue, with FBI and Homeland Security working to determine motives and whether the attack is connected to terrorism.
And joining us now is reporter Devo Klein with developments in the story. Devo, we now have the identity of the shooter.
That's right, absolutely. So the shooter has been identified. He is 29-year-old, and I hope I don't butcher this, but Rahmanullah Lakanwal. He is of Afghani descent. And we know from the scene that he was working alone. As we mentioned, he shot 2 National Guards, and they are critically injured from this shooting. But we now have more information from the CIA director himself. Now, he moved to the United States in September of 2021 as part of a special, Biden-era immigration program. But this was no ordinary program. It was a very special plan.
From the Taliban, the refugees from the Taliban
That's
attack.
right. Yeah. But it was a very special plan that was made just for people who have worked with U.S.-backed organizations. He was already recognized by the United States, and so he was given basically a grant to come and enter the United States in September of 2021, and he is now the shooter of this, horrible and violent shooting.
Do we know anything at all about motivation yet?
So we don't know yet. We are waiting for confirmation and for more information from the CIA and, of course, their directors. But once we do know, we will definitely follow up. We don't know of any terror motives at this point.
All right, we'll keep a close eye on the story.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Devo.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
The Mossad has thwarted yet another Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps plot targeting Israeli interests abroad, this time in Africa. According to media reports, Mossad, working closely with African security forces, dismantled the IRGC-led plan aimed at Israeli diplomatic sites in Senegal and Uganda. The plot involved a network of Pakistani and Bangladeshi agents operating from Iran, as well as local African recruits. They were tasked with surveillance, buying Western weapons, and preparing attacks for payment. Authorities say the cell was caught before any damage could be done. Mossad also exposed senior IRGC officer Sadar Amar as a key mastermind behind multiple plots targeting Jews and Israelis worldwide between 2024 and 25. Dozens of attacks were foiled thanks to coordinated intelligence actions. Experts say these cases show Iran continues to invest heavily in global terror operations, but Mossad and international partners have proven they can disrupt these plots early, maintaining Israeli security even far from home. In another blow to the IRGC, Australia will now list them as a state sponsor of terrorism for carrying out 2024 anti-Semitic attacks. Foreign Minister Penny Wong announced the designation after an intelligence assessment concluded that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps orchestrated attacks targeting Australia's Jewish community. In August, Canberra accused Iran of directing 2 anti-Semitic arson attacks in Sydney and Melbourne last year. On Tuesday, Australia expelled Tehran's ambassador, giving him 7 days to leave, the country's first such diplomatic expulsion since World War II. Well, Israel loses billions of shekels every year, not to war or infrastructure, but to food being thrown away. A new report shows the country has lost more than $57 billion in food value over the last decade alone. Our correspondent, India Naftali, reports on the scale of the crisis and the solutions already underway.
Israelis threw away billions of dollars of food in the last decade. This is especially concerning considering how many families in the country suffer with food insecurity. The new food waste report shows how much money and nutritious food is being lost every single year. But it also shows that the tools to fix the problem already exist. The 10th annual Food Waste and Rescue Report from BDO and Lekit Israel, the country's national food bank, shows Israel has lost about $57 billion in food value over the past decade. The report, prepared with the Ministries of Environmental Protection and Health, warns that food loss remains one of Israel's most expensive problems. However, this year's report does show a positive trend. Israeli consumers are wasting less food, a drop of 13.3% per person. But with population growth and rising living costs, the total volume of waste remains very high.
Food waste affects Israel in 3 major ways.
In 2024 alone, Israel threw away 2.6 million tons of food, worth about $7 billion. That is nearly 40% of the country's entire food production and equal to 1.3% of the national GDP.
Socially, it makes life hard for families who already struggle to afford healthy food. The average Israeli family discarded about $2,915 worth of food last year. Meanwhile, 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Health costs associated with food insecurity are even higher, reaching about $1.57 billion a year. These costs include chronic illnesses such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, and other conditions linked to poor nutrition. And environmentally, food waste uses water, land, and energy that cannot be recovered, costing Israel about $1.14 billion annually in lost resources and pollution. But Israel has built a strong foundation for change to reduce food waste in places like restaurants, army bases, farms, or at home. These solutions include expanding food rescue operations in farms and supermarkets, using the Food Donation Act to increase safe donations, and implementing the national plan that sets targets for cutting waste and redirecting surplus food to families in need. Leket has also been working with government ministries, pushing for new laws and helping shape the national plan. They say the next step is to keep the momentum going so these plans turn into real, large-scale change, because the level of waste is still far too high. These plans are expected to save billions and support lower and middle-income families.
Leket says Israel already has a scalable system for food rescue. What it needs now, they say, is funding, coordination, and national commitment. Their goal is in Israel, where food isn't thrown away while families go hungry.
And after Israeli strikes in Beirut killed Hezbollah's chief of staff last week, analysts said the group was under pressure to respond. They did not. Now observers say the escalation in Lebanon is unlikely, at least until after the visit of Pope Leo XIV, scheduled to begin on Sunday. The Pope headed to Turkey for the first stop of his Middle East trip. He is due to arrive in Lebanon on Sunday. The papal visit puts diplomatic and security pressure on all parties, including Hezbollah. The Pope has called for peace and urged restraint following the strike. Yet pressure from Hezbollah's base and internal leadership means retaliation remains a possibility. Security analysts say Hezbollah feels forced to respond to restore deterrence after what it sees as a major Israeli escalation. There is no public indication that they have decided to wait for the papal visit. The Pope's trip is meant to be a pilgrimage of hope and harmony, aiming to bring a message of peace, unity, and solidarity, especially to a Lebanon battered by economic collapse, political instability, war, and the lingering trauma of the 2020 port explosion. An outdoor mass will be held at the site. For Lebanon, the visit is symbolic, a message of hope to Christian communities, encouragement to preserve the country's new government, and a call for global attention to Lebanon's economic and humanitarian crisis. Israel says it will continue to act against any ceasefire violations in Lebanon and will act regardless of diplomatic pressure. Well, Israel's food scene just scored a major international win. Despite years of war and demand to boycott Israeli businesses, 8 Israeli restaurants have been named among the top 1,000 in the world by the French restaurant guide La Liste. It's one of the most respected global gastronomic rankings. Our correspondent India Naftali shows us why Israel's culinary scene continues to thrive against all odds.
I'm standing here outside OCD Tel Aviv that was recently ranked as one of the top 1,000 restaurants in the entire world. And for such a small country like Israel, to secure 8 out of the 1,000 best restaurants in the world is quite impressive. The war has taken a toll on Israel's restaurant industry, but daily life continues. In the evenings, the streets are still busy and restaurants are full. Israel's food scene has always been built on a blend of North African, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean flavors. It's a reflection of Jewish diaspora traditions and a cutting-edge fusion movement that has taken hold of the Israeli restaurant industry in the recent years. Now, that mix is earning global praise. Despite years of war that shook the restaurant industry, 8 Israeli restaurants have been ranked among La Liste's top 1,000 restaurants in the world. 7 are in Tel Aviv, and 1 is in Jerusalem. Leading Israel's lineup is OCD Tel Aviv. It's a tasting menu restaurant by chef Raz Rahav, which received the highest ranking in the country. Next is Mashia, known for its fresh local ingredients and modern use of spices.
Right behind it is a restaurant called Elena at the Norman Hotel, run by chefs Daniel Zur and Omer Shadmi. Other Tel Aviv favorites also made the list. Manta Ray, a beachfront seafood classic, Claro, a farm-to-table restaurant, and Pastel, led by chef Gal Ben Moshe at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. Jerusalem also claimed a spot with Chakra, a 25-year fixture of the capital's food scene. The final Israeli entry is Popina in the Neve Tzedek neighborhood in Tel Aviv, where the menu is built around 5 cooking techniques, from curing to slow cooking. For Israel, this year's recognition means something more. It is a reminder that even in difficult times, its culinary talent continues to innovate, inspire, and draw the world's attention.
Makes me hungry. Well, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 14 degrees Celsius or 58 degrees Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow we'll see sunny skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. And you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Steve Leibowitz. Be well, and thanks so much for watching.
Hello and welcome back to the ILTV News Podcast. I'm Ayan Hoffman, Executive Editor of ILTV, and we're happy to have you back, our viewers and our listeners. So I have with me today Moran Samoun, an Israeli attorney, a certified mediator, and an ADHD coach. Welcome, Moran.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful,
Thank you.
Of course. So, I just named a lot of hats. They don't necessarily seem like they would fit together. Attorney, mediator, ADHD coach. Which role do you feel is most you and why?
Well, I feel that I'm all of that, but if I have to choose one, it's going to be the mediator because it combines my abilities in the law area and the understanding and the emotions from the ADHD coach. So instead of just arguing in front of court, I build bridges between people who can't see eye to eye anymore. So mediator is going to be my answer for that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you've been in this family law for over 20 years, but your approach is very different than most lawyers. What inspired you to blend this legal work with the emotional work and the ADHD?
When you say 20 years, it sounds a lot. It's a lot, but I've never fit the traditional lawyer mold. Never. So I think that think different is the way of life for me, and this is why I always study and trying to find new ways and new tools to help my clients, the firm's clients, and through that, the other people who get through divorce and especially hard conflict divorces, but also inheritance and other family law areas.
And the ADHD came into the legal practice then in order to help the clients?
Well, the ADHD came because of my recognition of my ADHD.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD thanks to my son. So, yeah, they're the best teachers when you want to learn from. So after I was diagnosed, I tried to get skills and tools to help myself. And through that, I discovered the whole world of ADHD and the influence it has on family and couples. And this is why ADHD is not only a small niche, it's way, way wider than that. Did you know that almost 70% of divorce cases has one or two partners with ADHD?
Really?
And with every family who's got only one child with ADHD, they don't have to have more than that. They have 3 times more chance to get a divorce than a regular family. So with these conditions and the understanding that the divorce and separation in Israel are the rate of 45%, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people, and this is why we need to have a different approach to them.
And you were also divorced as well, right? So that you have ADHD and you've been divorced. So tell me about that.
Okay, so before I was diagnosed with ADHD, I got a divorce. And through that proceedings, I understood that it's not enough to have the legal issues. You need to have the emotional, the insight, emotional tools to understand the proceeding, because divorce is one of the greatest and biggest crisis within person's life. It's like an umbrella crisis. It goes through your work and how you perceive yourself and your place within the family, friends, everything. And when it affects all these areas, you need to have special tools to handle this. It's not only a family case that you go to court with. It's a whole person that you need to give them tools in order to proceed from this crisis with strength and abilities.
And after going through your own divorce and then your discovery of ADHD, and now you work with so many couples and so many clients, how do you get through every day hearing about other people's challenges when you've had your own, now you're dealing with it? It seems like it would be a very difficult endeavor.
One of the questions that I get a lot is, do you take your work at home to home?
Yeah.
So I try not to, but first of all, my partner and the children are very grounding base in my life. But other than that, every morning I have like a quick mental check-in, see what is my focus on today, what are the things that I can control and can control, and focus on the things that I can control. Because when you handle people crises all day long, and with the environment that we have in the country today, people can crumble and it demoralized. So in order to be effective this way, I specialize my first few minutes on the day to focus on what I can control.
And you also have a very interesting motto for your company. Think different, act different, get a different results. Can you explain that and maybe share a story that demonstrates that philosophy going into action?
First of all, this is the firm's philosophy, but this is the way of life for me. And Einstein said it before. If you act the same way and expect different results, this is the definition of insanity. And the divorce crisis and family crisis is special, but divorce crisis is very hard on people. So if they act the same way they acted in the marriage, the result will be the same, and we want to have different results. This is why we are approaching this crisis differently. So we see what makes people act the way they act, what are the triggers, and how to avoid them. We are giving them tools to how to react towards the other side and the children, and we make them, the clients, have best decision they can have in the court and outside the court because of that.
So it's really interesting. So are you coaching them not only through the divorce procedure, but also what will happen afterwards?
Yeah. When they have the mediation, when we talk about it in a few minutes, but when they have a mediation process with me, the last stage is follow-up, 3 months of follow-up. So the words will not only be on the paper, they will be in life. And we are helping them go through the crisis with the reassurance that there is somebody that can help them with afterwards.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, I'm also divorced, and hearing this is very different than the process that I went through and probably most people's processes. I do want to take a step back just for 1 minute because you mentioned 2 stats that I think I want to unpack real quick. One is that you said that in almost every divorce, at least one of the couples, or in 70, what did you say?
70%, almost 70% of the divorce cases, one of two partners has ADHD.
How did you learn that statistic? And is that in every country, just in Israel?
Well, for the last 7 years, I've been researching the field of ADHD and the influence it has on family and couples and parenthood. And I learned that it's genetics. It's go through the generations and doesn't skip generations. So if you have a child, even if it's one child with ADHD in the family, it's most likely that one of two of his parents has ADHD. Yeah. So the statistics is very obvious and nobody is talking about it. So when somebody is acting aggressively, people only see the aggressive side. They don't see the flaunting, the misunderstood of the situation. Or when somebody is talking loudly or very rude, nobody is seeing the fear or the misunderstanding of the situation. So this is why I decided to form a committee in the Israeli Bar Association that help ADHD people who are in the legal system through all the areas of the legal system.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then the 45% that you mentioned in Israel, there's about a 45% divorce rate, you said?
In Israel, there are 45% of divorces and separation because not everybody is getting married through the rabbinical court. Actually, in the U.S., is 54% of divorce and separation. So they have higher rates of separation over there. And the ADHD field there is less known as it in Israel.
Interesting. Yeah, that's what I wanted to know is how does Israel kind of measure up? The U.S. is one of the higher countries, I think, with the divorce rate.
Yeah.
In comparison to other countries in the region, are we higher, lower?
We are high, but not higher. But the divorce rate is lower, but ADHD diagnosis is higher. Okay, we have what we call in Israel overdiagnosis, ADHD. So we have that in the U.S. also, but in Israel we see that with children in schools and students and so on. But the real thing is after you finish studying, because ADHD affects all areas of life. It's the impulsivity and the lateness, missed meetings, not knowing how to act or plan or do anything that is the executive functions, the basic executive functions in their life. So it affects the communication. It affects how they perceive themselves, mostly in the lower bar, and it affects how they communicate with others because in the first place they hear things different than other people are talking to them. So it's one of the biggest complex that I have in family, because once you have one person with ADHD and he speaks a different language, and you have another one, the whole family is ADHDers because they speak different languages. This is why they have most miscommunications and fights and all that.
You can see why that would then lead, of course, to divorce. Now, you created the CSC mediation method, Connection, Security, Calm. Walk me through what that actually looks like when you're in the room.
Well, as you said, it's the connection, security, calm. So first of all, we're making the safe place. This is the security, the safe place that they can talk inside the room with no surprises and no attacks. And then we have the connection between them. Sometimes when we need to rebuild the trust between the people, we make separate sessions, and then we have mutual ones, and this is how we rebuild the trust between them. And the third part is the calm. We are taking our time to take good decisions that will match the family, their needs, and their emotion struggles. So this is basically a very methodical approach towards family crises, especially divorce crises. And today it's not only for ADHD people. We have like PTSD people that comes back from the war, and actually the whole environment in the country, everybody is acting a little bit like they have ADHD, short temper, lateness. So as a lawyer, I'm giving them the legal structures, and ADHD coach, I'm giving them the understanding, and together they have the solution inside the courtroom. And it's based on the focus model.
Right, which I also
Yeah.
wanted to ask about, but just to go, before you get into the focus model, just give me like a concrete example of what that might look like in the case of, mediating a final divorce agreement, maybe for somebody with a child, coming with a parenting agreement, something like that.
Well, the first couple that I remember was a couple who came and they were sure they're not going to be able to sit in the same room together. Very sure about that. So instead of forcing them negotiation, I started with very short sessions with everyone separate. And after 3 or 4 sessions, short ones, we had the mutual ones. And after 3 months, they signed an agreement with a smile. But it's because they decided to do the work. They are not afraid of hard work. They understand that they understood that they had to go through a mediation and the coaching for ADHD in order to have a new communication tools. The communication that they had before didn't work. This is why they are getting a divorce. We need to find a new way to communicate. So they have these communication models that I made them. This is part of the proceedings. And they have to stick with this. And it makes them be sure that the message is going through, but without the ickiness, all the emotions and all the bad feelings that they have towards each other. When you have the smalls, it makes you be very direct and very focused. After 3 months, they signed on the agreement, and I think they're using the agreement today also. And the other example that I can tell you about is something that happened in the last few months. A couple after divorce came to me after the last several times that the husband came back from the front. He's got ADHD and PTSD. So his reaction, his behavior triggered the mother. And she started to behave from her fear, and it was affecting the children, actually, both of them, because they started to see the father as the mother is. So they came to me in order to have a new arrangement for the visitation rights. And through the proceeding of this mediation, they came back to the original, but with new tools, original scene, but with new tools, new communication tools, and new borders in order for them to work on. So I'm very happy.
Does it ever happen that as you're going through this process and people are developing these new tools that couples stay together instead of divorcing?
Actually, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. One time in the last year, there was this couple who came. They said, okay, we love each other, but we know we have to separate because we don't fit. Okay? We don't fit. I like organized home. She's messy. I like everything neat. She doesn't know how to handle money, and I like to handle money. All the differences. But they sat together in my room and they hold hands. So I asked them if it's final for them. And when I saw that they're hesitating, I just opened the opportunity that it is an option to write the agreement with staying together or divorcing. So after, I think it was 2.5 months, we had like a whole agreement that he came back home. They went to actually an ADHD parental guidance that helped them be a better parents and got the tools from her. And through that, they actually improved their communication. So I think they are still together. Otherwise, I would have heard something. But yeah.
Wow, what a great story. So now you mentioned this focus mediation model. Is that what you're speaking about now, or is that also something addition?
The focus model is the basic of the CSC mediation, and it's the 5 steps that we need to have in order to proceed this mediation. So the framework is like we are knowing what is the triggers, we are understanding the triggers, we are trying to get a solution for the trigger in order not to trigger anybody. And then through these solutions, we are going through the needs of the family, the specific needs of the family, instead of the process asking the families to manage themselves. We are managing the process through and around the family. So the solutions are ones that they have with a free choice. Instead of court, when you are hiding behind the other party, the lawyers, the judges, here you have to take a stand. You can't hide behind anything, but for people with ADHD and for most people, having a responsibility for your choice is the best thing for you in order to get a control of your life. And this is what most people need, a control feeling, stability. So focus model makes them finding the solution through the triggers and getting a better communication within the family through that.
And, I'm just thinking about when you get divorced, so there's mediation and as you mentioned, there's court.
Yeah.
Do you usually do mediation, I guess, before you go to court is the goal, and to stay out of court, correct?
Well, first of all, the misconception, the biggest misconception of mediation, that it's soft, it's less than a court, but it's the opposite. It needs to be with a lot of courage. People with courage go to mediation because they have to take responsibility for their actions, for their choices, and for the way that they're handling themselves. So in court, you don't have any responsibility for anything. It's like, okay, judge, take the decision. It's yours. And this is the big the difference between the court and the mediation.
The mediation, are you the one mediator for the couple, or do they still bring lawyers to the session?
It's a great question because most of the time I'm the mediator without lawyers. Wow. And they can consult lawyers outside the mediation room. I think adding lawyers to the mediation room, it brings the conflict, not lower them. So I rather not having lawyers inside my room, but I more than welcome, and I actually tell them to go and consult a lawyer to see if the solution that we have is fair, is the one that stands with the rights. And because as a mediator, I am not looking for saving anybody's rights. I'm looking for the best solution for the family and her needs and its needs. So it doesn't have to be even. It's mostly it's creative solutions for the family. So they need to consult a lawyer of their own.
And do people who have been divorced sometimes come to you afterwards when they already have an agreement and say, we want to rework our agreement?
Yeah, sometimes. The couple with the PTSD that I told you about, they had an agreement. They've been divorced for like 4 years. And the problem started now, after he came back from the front.
Right.
So they need to adjust their life to the situation that has occurred. And they are smart people because it could easily go to police and court and a social worker and the whole shebang. But they decided to be responsible for their lives. They came to me, they got parental guidance that is especially for ADHD, and when you have ADHD and PTSD, you feel everything in extreme, actually. Right. So when you're happy, you're happy. When you're upset, you're upset. So they need to have special tools or the ones that are good for them.
Do other people think like you? I mean, this whole concept of combining the ADHD coaching or the knowledge behind it with the legal, are there others that we can find either in the country or in the world that are doing the same thing?
The short question is no.
Wow.
Actually, I think there's only one that I know in the U.S. Who is a lawyer and an ADHD coach, and he handles most in children, custody and stuff. But there is no other lawyer and mediator and ADHD coach that combines all of them together and have a special method. And this is a special and unique specialty that we have in the firm. It makes me very happy. Yeah. But I think that the more the awareness is going to be higher, the more lawyers are going to find this field of expertise very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that.
And when you say the firm, are there other lawyers working with you then in
yes,
this? People that have trained like you now at this point?
They are not trained like me. Okay. I'm training them to work with me.
Okay.
But I'm working. I'm in the front of the law firm. We have lawyers, and outside the law firm we have ADHD coach, parental guidance. CPOs and other specialties that we need to have in order to give the whole package to the clients. Yeah. So we're working with other special person in the law firm, in the law area and other areas. Yeah.
And I mean, divorce is obviously, as you mentioned, one of the most painful life events. Certainly touches, as you said, so many aspects of people's lives. What advice would you give to someone who's about to start that divorce journey?
First of all, don't rush. Don't rush into going into court and submitting a dispute request. Try to stay calm for a second, because all the people around you are having very, very, very good advices, but are not always good for you, okay? So try to stay calm. Go and have a professional consultation, parental guidance or emotional guidance, because you can go through this divorce crisis without getting tools, emotional tools. It's like putting a Formula One driver in Subaru and asking him to win the race. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So get emotional tools, get a lawyer, and especially get the way that will maintain your energy and dignity, because they are the only one who's going to last after this is going to pass. And it shall pass like everything else. So you need to work through this process in order to get out stronger and better than
and
you
I'm
were.
assuming that when you finish the mediation, though, it does get submitted to the courts in order to get signed and ratified.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, yeah.
I have to, we are going with them to the court. The judge is giving it a clearance, and it becomes a verdict. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And you said that every crisis, is a turning point. And as you just mentioned, you want to come out further ahead, when this is over. Can you share a moment in your own life or your work that has really proved that that's a good philosophy?
Well, the year I got divorced, I also left my partner in law, in the law firm. So I got divorced twice at the same year, at work and at home. It was very hard, and I actually start from scratch. I built myself from scratch, and it was a long process, very painful process, but I was very determined to go through it. And through that, I managed to have my law firm to be one of the successful law firms in Israel for the last 9 years, in Dun & Bradstreet and BDI. And I became the sole attorney who handles ADHD crises within the family and outside the family. So it makes me very happy that the whole process came into one good goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it helps me help people go through their crises to their better than I was before, because I went through what they are going through. I know how they feel. I know how they act. I know why they act the way they act, and I know how to help them. So I'm happy I have the chance to do that.
Sure. So we're going to run out of time, but I want to ask you, one more question. Let's just say that you could wave a magic wand and you could make one change to the Israeli legal system. Let's end with that. What would it be and why?
Wow. If I had a magic wand, I would have told the Israeli government to make the mediation, but not the formal one that they have today, that the dispute request that they have, that they're going to the mediation only for one session. Nobody's hearing them. Nobody's telling them what to do. And afterwards, they're not supposed to go through that. So the actual mediation, the one that helps them see the other party and to get a solution, this one I would love for the Israeli government to put inside the
to require
family.
it before you go through the dispute. Sure. Well, Moran, thank you so much for joining today. I think that our viewers are certainly learned a lot, and definitely it's a positive way in some sense to look at divorce. So I really thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a big crisis, but it's a huge step towards success and growth. Right. So I hope the people are listening will join us in this way of handling crises within the family. And thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you.
To ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Devo Klein, and here is your roundup of all of the latest developments coming out of Israel. This morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu sent an official pardon request in regards to his ongoing corruption trial. After Trump's visit, where the American president told Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Netanyahu, the Prime Minister was required to file an official document, a move that has now been completed. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
התלבטתי רבות בעניין זה, אבל מה שקרה בזמן האחרון הכריע את הכף. בגלל החלטה שנובעת מהרכב השופטים הדן בתיק, אני נדרש להעיד 3 פעמים בשבוע. 3 פעמים בשבוע. זו דרישה בלתי אפשרית שאיננה נדרשת משום אזרח אחר בישראל. כמו כן, עמדו לנגד עיניי פניותיו החוזרות ונשנות של הנשיא טראמפ לנשיא המדינה. הנשיא טראמפ קרא לסיום מיידי של המשפט, כדי שאוכל יחד איתו לקדם ביתר שאת אינטרסים חיוניים המשותפים לישראל ולארצות הברית בחלון זמנים שספק אם יחזור. אזרחי ישראל היקרים, פעם אחר פעם נבחרתי בבחירות דמוקרטיות וקיבלתי את האמון שלכם להמשיך לכהן כראש ממשלת ישראל בראש וראשונה, כדי לממש יעדים היסטוריים אלה. מטעמים אלה הגישו היום עורכי דיני בקשה לחנינה לנשיא המדינה. אני מצפה שכל מי שטובת המדינה לנגד עיניו יתמוך בצעד זה.
And it is now up to the president whether to pardon Netanyahu or not, a decision which is expected to be made in the coming weeks. And the Syrian front exploded over the weekend, with the IDF now weighing a major escalation in Syria. This after new intelligence suggests that Syrian President Ahmed al-Shaara's own general intelligence forces may have directly fired on Israeli troops during this weekend's operations in Bet Jin. What began as a routine arrest raid has now turned into one of the most dangerous incidents since Israel entered southern Syria last year. Israeli media reports say that if the IDF confirms regime involvement, the army could shift from targeted arrests to a far more aggressive strategy, including frequent precise airstrikes to break the growing networks of terror cells near the border. This development follows a tense weekend with the IDF's 55th Brigade operating in southern Syria to apprehend two brothers from the Al-Jama'ah terror group. The two terrorists were taken into custody without resistance, but troops were met with heavy gunfire upon evacuation. A standoff erupted between local terrorists and IDF troops, leaving 6 Israelis wounded, 3 of them in serious condition. Drones, helicopters, and fighter jets were pushed in, striking pre-planned targets and providing cover for the extrication of the troops. Syria media claims that 13 people were killed in the incident. And on a different front, this weekend, the IDF struck Hezbollah sites across southern Lebanon in a series of precision airstrikes based on real-time intelligence. The targets included weapons storage facilities and military positions in violation of the ceasefire. The IDF added that Hezbollah is actively preparing attacks on Israel. These strikes come as Pope Leo is expected to arrive in Lebanon today. Ahead of his visit, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem welcomed the Pope and called on him to condemn what he called Israeli aggression. Qassem said today the group, quote, has the right to respond to Israel's killing of its military chief Ali Tabatabai in Beirut airstrike. Qassem called the strike a blatant aggression and warned that Hezbollah will choose the time and the place of its response. And we have a quick report that the anti-terror operations in Judea and Samaria have wrapped up with 200 Palestinians being arrested and in custody of the IDF. Weapons have been found and confiscated. And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, and thanks so much for joining us for this update.
Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS. I'm Emily Schrader, and this week we're taking a look at the bad faith attacks on Christian Zionists, which were spearheaded by folks like Tucker Carlson. We'll speak to Sandra Hagee Parker, the chairwoman of Christians United for Israel Action Fund, to explore the theological basis for Christian Zionism, plus a deep dive into how the Islamic Republic of Iran continues to evade sanctions, even while the country is seemingly collapsing internally. First, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Gaza Strip. A supposed ceasefire may be in effect, even though Hamas is currently in violation of it for many weeks, given they're still holding 3 hostage bodies. But the U.S. administration isn't letting that stop them from pushing forward with a proposal for later stages of this same agreement. This new international plan being pushed at the UN by the United States to govern the Gaza Strip, it would create a transnational authority that would control security, administration, and borders in the Gaza Strip. Now, already Russia has put forward its own version, endorsing Palestinian statehood, and both superpowers are trying to shape the future of Gaza from thousands of miles away. The idea that they're selling is simple: put Gaza under international control, bring in neutral security forces, remove Hamas from power, hold elections, and create a path to stability. But what they're proposing is not just unrealistic, it's dangerous, and it's been done before. Every time the West has attempted to engineer governance in highly radicalized or internally divided societies, it has failed. We've seen this again and again. The United States forced elections in Gaza previously, and Hamas won in a landslide. Then they carried out a violent coup against Fatah. In Lebanon, UNIFIL was supposed to disarm Hezbollah, with millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars being poured into international force, but Hezbollah is now more powerful than the Lebanese army. Iraq, after the United States invasion, descended into sectarian war and eventually gave rise to ISIS. Libya collapsed into chaos and militia rule after the NATO intervention. Afghanistan received 20 years of Western nation building and fell back into Taliban control the moment the United States left. The lesson is consistent. When the West imposes its own models on societies that are deeply tribal, religiously motivated, and politically fractured, the project collapses and leaves a bigger crisis behind. Now, skeptics may look at West Germany or Japan after World War II as examples of successful foreign-guided transitions, but these cases are not remotely comparable to Gaza or the Arab world. Both countries were already coherent nation states. They had functioning civil infrastructure, they weren't divided by clan-based or sectarian factions, and most importantly, they were not ruled by a radical Islamic theocracy or exposed to transnational jihadist ideology. None of the conditions that made Germany and Japan successful are present in Gaza today. And this brings us to a central problem. There is no real evidence that this international plan could successfully remove Hamas from power or disarm them. Not one country involved in this plan has explained how they would physically disarm a terror army that has spent years building bunkers, weapon stockpiles, and underground cities. And history shows why these promises should not be believed. United Nations Resolution 1559 ordered Hezbollah to disarm. It never happened. United Nations Resolution 1701 reiterated it years later. Never happened. Hezbollah only grew stronger. There's no reason to believe that Gaza would be any different. In fact, this plan sends the exact opposite message. It tells Palestinians that October 7th, which was not about statehood, but about erasing Israel, has resulted in international pressure for a new political process. That signal rewards terrorism and teaches that extreme violence leads to political gains. It undermines the few remaining moderates in Palestinian society and further destroys the authority of the Palestinian Authority. And let's not ignore the core of the conflict, Palestinian rejectionism. Every major plan for peace or statehood since 1937 has been rejected by Palestinian leadership. And polling shows that a large majority of Palestinians celebrated October 7th attacks. This is not a society prepared for responsible governance or peaceful coexistence. It's a society radicalized through education, media, and religious incitement for generations. No international committee can undo that in a year, or even in a decade. If the West truly wants to help Palestinians, it must do what this plan refuses to address. It must support the slow development of responsible leadership. It must end the pay-for-slay payments. It must reform textbooks. It must hold leaders accountable for incitement in Arabic. And it must make all aid conditional on real political reform. It must shut down UNRWA, which has spent decades entrenching radicalization instead of resolving it. The only path to a lasting future is when two sovereign nations decide their future together of their own will. It can't be forced from the outside. Every attempt to do so has failed, and this plan will fail for the same reasons. And now on to our headlines. We have a lot to unpack this week when it comes to Iran. First up, the water crisis in Iran has morphed into a direct threat to the regime's very survival. Tehran, with some 10 million residents, is preparing for regular water cuts as dams fail and years of mismanagement collide with a severe drought. Now, the situation is worse than the regime is willing to admit. According to the most recent data, only 23.2 billion cubic meters of water entered Iran's dams by August 2025. That's a drop of 42% compared to last year and represents one of the lowest inflows in recorded history. More than half of major reservoirs are at or below 50% capacity, and one of Tehran's key dams is down to 8%. Nationwide, 10% of Iran's dams are effectively dry. Now, groundwater data is even more alarming. Iran currently extracts approximately 57 billion cubic meters of groundwater every year. And of Iran's 609 aquifers, more than 300 are in critical condition. Per capita renewable water resources have collapsed from nearly 4,500 cubic meters in the 1970s to roughly 1,500 today, which puts Iran firmly below the global water stress threshold. Now, the incompetent government blames climate change, but in reality, it's actually because of decades of corrupt infrastructure spending, shoddy maintenance, and the diversion of water to elite districts that's turned this resource crunch into a full-blown political crisis. Protests are already beginning in smaller towns where tap water is running out, and citizens are angry that their basic survival comes after the regime's foreign terror projects. This matters for Israel, of course, and its allies because a domestic crack-up in inside Iran could push the regime to escalate through its terror proxies or even through its nuclear program as a way to deflect public anger. Now, the water crisis also reveals a central truth about the Islamic Republic. This is a regime that talks about exporting revolution and building proxy armies, but it can't even keep the taps running in its own capital. Well, the trouble from the Islamic Republic of Iran doesn't end with the domestic crisis. However, the regime has once again escalated maritime tensions in the region after the IRGC Navy seized the Marshall Islands flagged tanker Talara in the Gulf of Oman this week. The ship was carrying approximately 30,000 tons of petrochemical product when multiple fast craft surrounded it and forced it into Iranian territorial waters under what Tehran claims is a judicial order. Now, this incident took place just about 40 kilometers off the UAE coast near the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important energy chokeholds on the planet. Now, the significance of this move really cannot be overstated. First, it's a direct assertion of power by the Islamic Republic in a critical global trade route, where approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil passes daily. By seizing a foreign tanker mid-transit, the Islamic Republic sends a clear message that it can disrupt global energy flows at any time it wants, sanctions or not. This is maritime coercion. Second, this seizure comes at a moment of heightened regional pressure on Tehran. After months of Israeli and American action against Iranian proxy terror networks and infrastructure, the regime is signaling that while its economy is struggling and water reservoirs are collapsing, it still has hard power options that can create global consequences. Third, it's not an isolated incident. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a long history of using tanker seizures to extract leverage and retaliate against international pressure. Now, it's done this repeatedly over the past decade, and every time it makes one thing clear. Even under sanctions, Iran's maritime and oil networks remain active and dangerous. For Israel and its allies, this serves as a warning. The energy waterways are a key front in Iran's strategic playbook. The Talara incident is a reminder that the Islamic Republic can project power far beyond its borders, and that any plan to contain the regime must include maritime security and tighter coordination against Iran's shadow fleet, which I'll get into in just a few minutes. So how are they getting away with it? Now, most disturbingly, data shows that the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is under heavy sanctions, has actually peaked in oil exports in the month of October, begging the question, how? Let's break it down. The truth is this regime is still making tens of billions of dollars every year from oil. Not quietly, not secretly, but openly. This is the single most important financial story driving the security crisis in the Middle East. It's the reason the regime can threaten Israel. It's the reason Hezbollah remains armed to the teeth. It's the reason the Houthis are able to fire missiles. It's the reason Iranian drones reach Europe and Africa. And almost no one is talking about it or understands what's actually happening. Despite sanctions, the regime is still exporting well over 1.4 million barrels of oil every single day. Now, if the global price of oil is $80 a barrel, Iran is selling it at a discount that brings it to about $60 or $65 a barrel. That means the regime earns approximately $100 million per day, every 24 hours, and none of it is going to the Iranian people. It doesn't rebuild hospitals. It doesn't fix the collapsing water system. It doesn't help families who cannot afford bread due to 40 to 50% inflation. This money goes straight to the regime's military system and its proxy terror network. And how does Iran get away with this while supposedly being under sanctions? It's because the regime has spent 4 decades building a global sanctions evasion machine, a perfected criminal economy run by the IRGC. They operate one of the largest illegal shipping networks on the planet. Analysts call it the ghost fleet. These are more than 300 old and, frankly, unreliable tankers that constantly change their names, fake their flag registrations, turn off their tracking systems, and vanish from radar. They perform ship-to-ship transfers in the middle of the ocean, usually at night. They repaint the hulls. They falsify documents. They spoof coordinates. Some of these vessels even travel with navigation systems turned off, which, of course, is incredibly dangerous, simply to avoid detection. And where does all this oil go? almost all of it goes to China. China is the financial lifeline of the Islamic Republic. Chinese refiners buy discounted Iranian crude that is marketed as Malaysian blend or Oman heavy or generic fuel oil. This is not speculation. It's thoroughly documented by Reuters, tanker trackers, and multiple United States Treasury designations. So to summarize, the regime sells illegal oil, China knowingly buys illegal oil, and the world pretends not to notice because cheap oil benefits everyone except the Iranian people and all those who suffer from the terrorism that this regime exports. Now let's talk about where that money actually goes. Once the regime gets paid, likely through restricted Chinese accounts, the funds are controlled by the IRGC. The Revolutionary Guards and the Quds Force command these revenue streams through networks of front companies and, allegedly, through the giant construction and logistics conglomerate known as Khatam al-Anbiya. The money is then distributed across the regime's terror portfolio. Now, according to U.S. intelligence assessments, congressional research reports, and U.S. Treasury designations, Hezbollah receives an estimated $700 million to $1 billion per year. The Houthis in Yemen receive between $150 and $250 million. Iraqi militias receive between $100 million and $200 million. And Hamas receives an estimated $70 to $100 million each year, in addition to weapons, training, intelligence support, and engineering assistance for rockets and drone systems. So when people ask how Hezbollah keeps stockpiling rockets, or how the Houthis continue firing ballistic missiles, or how the Islamic Republic continues to expand its nuclear program despite sanctions, the answer is simple. The Islamic Republic of Iran is still making money every single day, and sanctions are not being enforced. Now, here is the part that almost no one talks about. We could shut this down tomorrow. The only thing missing is the political will. There are 5 major pressure points that could crush the regime's revenue stream without firing a single shot. First, target the ghost fleet. Don't sanction ship names, which can be changed. Instead, sanction the hull numbers, which cannot be changed. If the United States and European Union banned 200 hull numbers from receiving insurance or entering ports, half of Iran's export capacity would collapse instantly. Second, go after the Chinese refineries that knowingly purchase Iranian crude. These facilities depend on Western equipment and Western financing. If even 3 of them were sanctioned, the entire network could collapse. Third, hit the front companies. Most of these firms in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and the UAE will collapse the moment they're listed by the U.S. Treasury. 4, seize ships again. When the United States captured the giant tanker known as Grace 1, it disrupted the regime's smuggling operations for months. Repeated seizures could deter the entire network. 5, cyber disruption. The IRGC uses specific Chinese bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and payment pipelines for its oil trade. Cyber operations targeting these channels can cripple the entire machine. This is how you can collapse the Islamic Republic's financial backbone without a war, and how you force the regime to choose between funding terror proxies and surviving internally. The Islamic Republic is not sanctioned in practice, it's sanctioned on paper. And the moment the world chooses to enforce those sanctions with real consequences, Iran's financial lifeline ends. Now, jumping back to Israel, today we have a very special guest joining us to shed some light on the perspective of Christian Zionists after the recent fallout from pundits like Tucker Carlson, who now famously stated that he hates Christian Zionists and has been spearheading a hate campaign against them, along with several others who are self-declared right-wing pundits. Now, Sandra Hagee Parker is the chairwoman of Christians United for Israel Action Fund. She's also an attorney, author, and public speaker. This fund supports a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, standing up to anti-Semitism, defending Israel's right to self-defense and self-determination. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today on Axis of Truth. We're at a very unusual time in America, particularly, and in recent weeks, we've seen an alarming, well, what I consider alarming resurgence of blatant anti-Semitism in America, not only from Islamists, but from far-right extremists like Nick Fuentes. One of the most concerning aspects is that they're claiming to be Christian nationalists and to be supporters of President Trump. What's your take on this hijacking of Christianity that we see?
Emily, you said it exactly as it is. It's a hijacking. It is usurping the banner of Christianity in order to legitimize one's anti-Semitism. And funnily enough, it's not new. This is something that has happened for centuries, whether you're talking about the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, Martin Luther, Adolf Hitler. every generation has tried and failed to use the banner of Christianity as a way to authorize them to say and do whatever they want to the Jewish people and after 1948, the modern state of Israel.
Now, how can Christians fight against this pernicious trend of those speaking in the name of Christianity, yet actively espousing anti Semitic canards and stereotypes?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing for every single Christian to remember is that the Bible is above the Constitution, right? Right now, we kind of have this like wrapping ourselves in the American flag and free speech and the First Amendment. And of course, this is America and we hold that value sacrosanct. But your party is not your faith. And MAGA is not the same thing as being a Christian. And being a conservative is not the same thing as being a Christian. And I can understand how people can get confused because sometimes the platform of the Republican Party or conservatism has wrapped itself in Judeo-Christian values, which is outstanding. However, it's up to the Christian to be able to discern when what is being said from their party or their favorite pundit contravenes the word of God. And when it does, the word of God prevails. So it's important for a Christian to know why they support the state of Israel, because if their favorite pundit or their favorite party comes against the state of Israel, they cannot be moved.
Now, you frequently cited passages such as Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, and Romans 11:1 and 2, in support of Christian Zionism as an aspect of Christian theology itself. Could you break down how you interpret those texts as mandating active support for Israel and how you respond to critics who say this interpretation conflates theology with foreign policy?
Well, first of all, Israel is not a policy issue for members of Christians United for Israel. It is not a political issue, it is a biblical issue. And for those of us that are old enough, we can all remember when American politics saw Israel the same way. Democrats and Republicans, independent, what have you, were pretty much unanimous in how they viewed the nation of Israel. So that modern politics decided to make Israel a policy issue is not on Christians. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible is a Zionist document. Christians, non-denominational evangelical Christians specifically, believe the entire Bible is true. The Old Testament is just as relevant as the New Testament. The Old Testament we see as God's will concealed. The New Testament is God's will revealed. Of course, they are written to different parties, different persons, but for the same purpose. And when you read in the Old Testament, when people say Old Covenant, you know, those are all euphemisms for replacement theology to try to make you think that the Old Testament is not relevant anymore. If the Old Testament is not relevant anymore, then God is not a covenant-keeping God, and God is a promise breaker. The Bible is either all true or it's all false. And so Christians believe, not just with respect to what the Bible says about the nation of Israel, Christians believe that with respect to everything, the Bible is true. God has left us a rule book, right? And so we don't make the rules, we just read them. And the Bible is extremely clear about the covenant that God made with the Jewish people. The Bible says that God's name is in Jerusalem, that Israel is the apple of God's eye. If Israel is important to God, then it is important to a Christian. Similarly, in the New Testament, when Paul says, I am of the tribe of Benjamin, have I been cast aside? Certainly not. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. I could go on, but you would have to have a faith that I am not capable of maintaining to go through the theological acrobatics to convince yourself that Christians have replaced Jews in the economy of God and that Israel is no longer important to God or Christians.
Recently, political pundit Tucker Carlson stated that he hates Christian Zionists, labeling some of their beliefs as a brain virus or even Christian heresy. Alarmingly, we also see a huge outpouring of support for Carlson instead of condemnation, even from many self-proclaimed Christian voices. Why do you think this is happening now, and how would you respond to these kinds of attacks?
Cowardice is why it's happening, whether one doesn't want to be ostracized from, I won't say the mainstream media because that doesn't exist anymore, right? It's about podcasts and all of these things. It used to be in news, if it bleeds, it leads. Now it's if it clicks, it sticks. And so it's hilarious to me that pundits, whose job is quite literally to have an opinion and to let their opinion be known, all of a sudden say, we're friends. I don't care if you're friends. Have them over for Christmas. It's irrelevant to me. But what do you say? What is your opinion about the views that he is espousing, about the views that he is legitimizing? As a pundit, your job is to either embrace or distance yourself from those. And I think evidence of the fact that Christian Zionists are here and not going away is the fact that Tucker issued a half-hearted, you can't even call it an apology. It's kind of like, that's not what I meant. Because whoops, millions of people don't like being told that they have brain rot. Because millions of people are actually educated on the Bible and they see through his efforts to delegitimize Judaism, to de-Judaize Jesus. And, they're not going to stand for it. So we're only going to see more from the grassroots of Christians United for Israel, from the Christian church in general, whether you're a member of CUFI or not, that this is a bridge too far, because we believe that the creation of the modern state of Israel, the Bible says a nation will be born in a day. The Jewish people coming to live in Israel are proof that God Almighty is who he says he is. And if you do not believe that, then you do not believe the Bible.
Does this kind of rhetoric matter in terms of how Christian Zionists are perceived? And will it affect your position or the position of CUFI going forward?
I mean, in terms of our mission, our mission will always remain clear. We have always been willing to go where the fight is. When we started CUFI, people were like, are you kidding? Anti-Semitism isn't real. Like, this is not 1940. What are you doing? And so we will always go where the fight is. And if that fight is now to what I would call the right of the right, I still think that we're absolutely dealing with fringe elements in the Republican Party. Of course, the largest vulnerability being the young people. We have seen how the policies in the classroom that are taught become the policies in the public square. And we have seen that what happened in America's colleges and universities after 10/7 shows the influence not of organic activism, but foreign influence have on America's colleges and universities. You've heard the rumor and innuendo of, who Tucker may or may not be partnered with respect to his business in terms of their influence in media. You've seen in entertainment, entertainers go to Qatar and the Middle East, and then all of a sudden come back, and comedians who have no business in foreign policy, much less a working knowledge, say Israel be genocide. And you can see the influence of the enemies of Israel. The church cannot be bought and will not be bought. And as such, it's our job to do what we can to combat lies with truth and to show anybody that has any questions as to Israel, its role in the Bible, the Jewish people, and our mandate to stand with them. It's our job to make sure that they understand that and to create a place for them to feel welcomed to express that view.
How would you respond to the claim that Christian Zionists and all Zionists are putting Israel first and not America first? What does America first even mean to you?
America first doesn't mean America only. The Bible doesn't say America first, right? I am a Christian and I have national pride. I am not a Christian nationalist. To operate at the exclusion of others, I think, is kind of fundamentally unchristian. However, when I hear America first, when I hear President Trump say America first, I know President Trump doesn't mean America only. And you can see Trump's actions to see that he doesn't think it means America only. And if you are truly America first and you look at it completely agnostically and you don't give any mind to any other nation other than your own, then the most rational and reasonable thing that you can do as an American is continue to ally with Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, to continue to invest in Israel, because America doesn't spend money in Israel. America doesn't give foreign aid to Israel. America invests to Israel with an ROI that is exponential. People say aid as if they have their hand out asking for help. They are doing us a solid. They are fighting our shared enemies. They are defending our shared values. And by the way, they are buying machines and tools that we make in the United States of America, quite literally job stimulus and creation, improving upon it and sharing it with us for free. So hate Israel all you want, but if you care about America and if you care about your nation and if you care about national security and if you care about maintaining the American exceptionalism that has so far been responsible for relative peace in the world, then you should continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the nation of Israel and her people because they are a large part of making sure that that continues.
As a final question, I want to ask you why it's important, not just at the theological level, but at a practical level for Christians to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, especially now. I mean, would you differentiate even between the two, and why or why not?
It's a three-legged stool: God, Israel, and Jewish people. One doesn't exist without the other. And again, the existence of the three of them are proof that God is who he says he is, that the Bible is real. So to answer your question, though, we're not going to look at it through that righteous prism. Let's look at it through the rational prism. Again, we don't make the rules, we read the rules. And God doesn't differentiate between Jews and the nation of Israel. It's for God to differentiate and decide, but we aren't God, right? And so we aren't here to cherry pick who's Jewish enough, who's not Jewish enough, etc. The mandate is clear. And like I said, if you don't want to look at the Bible as a theological document, you don't have to believe in it. Look at history. What has history shown us? History has shown us that every single nation that has come against the nation of Israel has failed. And not only have they failed, they are in the dustbin of history. Of course, if you look at ancient history, you have the pharaohs, you have Haman who hung from the gallows that he built for the children of Israel. In modern history, you have, well, we'll skip over the Ottomans and, all of those things, but go to more modern history, you have Hitler. Where are the goose-stepping Nazis? They're gone. You now have what we'll call the sons of Haman, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. The day after the nation of Israel was born, it was attacked by 5 nations. Explain to me how a nation that was born in a day can defend itself against a larger enemy, against an enemy with more weapons, against an enemy with more people. A nation the size of Rhode Island that has been fighting a 7-front war for 2 years is victorious only because there is a God, he is real, and what he says is true. Whether you believe that or not, look at what history has shown us. If you come against the nation of Israel, including the modern state of Israel, things are not going to go well for you. And I want to clarify something because I don't. Sorry, I'm editing myself. People say, you want to condemn the government of Israel, that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. You're right. Thank you, Captain Obvious. You're right. If you condemn the American government, does that mean that you're anti-America? Nobody condemns the Israeli government probably more than Israelis. So it doesn't mean that you can't opine or have an opinion about the policy decisions of the Israeli government. As an American, are you allowed to have an opinion? Sure, but you're not the one fighting and bleeding and dying for your country, nor are our soldiers fighting and bleeding and dying for their country. They've never asked us the same. So you can absolutely criticize the nation of Israel, its policies, what have you. That doesn't make you anti-Semitic. But when you are holding Israel to a standard that you don't hold any other nation to, including your own, then you might be an anti-Semite.
All right. Thank you, Sandra Hagee Parker of CUFI, for shedding some light on this issue.
Thank you so much, Emily, for having me.
And now the good, the bad, and the ugly of this week. The good news today is that even the most chaotic corners of American politics may finally be waking up. President Trump has now publicly called Marjorie Taylor Greene a lunatic in a new post and announced that he will support a primary opponent against her. And honestly, it's about time. This is the same member of Congress who once blamed wildfires on Jewish space lasers. She's also built an entire career around internet conspiracies. She also also loves to brand herself as America First, yet she focuses obsessively on Israel and aid to Israel, even though 99.7% of that aid is reinvested in the U.S. economy through defense contractors and joint security programs. That is not an economic burden, that is an economic multiplier. In fact, the entire U.S. foreign aid budget is only 3% of the U.S. annual budget. So what exactly is she fighting for? Her claims of patriotism evaporate the moment facts enter the conversation. And now even her own political allies are saying out loud what everyone else already knew. She is not a serious legislator. She's a professional agitator who turned Congress into a conspiracy carnival. Next up, the bad story of the week, Dave Smith, who recently appeared on Konstantin Kisin's Trigonometry podcast and arrogantly proclaimed that the Islamic Republic doesn't pose a threat to any of the Sunni Arab nations. Take a look.
I flat out reject the idea that Iran is an existential threat to any of those Sunni states in the region. But Saudi Arabia, who are we talking about? Jordan? Egypt?
UAE? I mean, if you speak to people in those countries...
Yeah, I'm sure they're concerned about them.
They're very concerned.
Yes, of course. And there's a Sunni Shiite beef that's been going on for many, many years. And there's a lot... But the idea that, the U.S. sock puppet states over there are really threatened by Iran, I just don't think is right.
They do feel that.
Yeah, okay, fine. But, I don't think they're right about that. I don't think Iran is taking over Saudi Arabia. What do you mean existential threat here?
Yeah, I think Saudi might like a word. Seriously, though, this is a prime demonstration of how American comedian Dave Smith, who has never lived in the region nor speaks any languages of the region, has no formal education or experience in anything even remotely related to international relations, history, politics, or religion, knows absolutely nothing about the Middle East, and particularly Iran, yet somehow still maintains the supreme arrogance of a Western-centric imbecile and thinks he knows better than those of us who actually live here. And now the ugly story for this week. The Babylon Bee posted a satire piece on Saturday mocking Megyn Kelly's sudden paranoia about imaginary Israeli assassination plots, playing on the 2024 exploding pagers operation against Hezbollah. They deleted it fast, but Kelly lost it on X, posting WTF, while her allies insisted that satire was a threat. This meltdown comes as parts of the American right increasingly fall down conspiracy rabbit holes, just like the baseless theories surrounding Charlie Kirk's death. But the real ugly here is Megyn's hypocrisy. She bashed Mark Levin this week for criticizing Tucker Carlson, yet refuses to condemn Candace Owens' open Jew hatred because, quote, she's the young mother. Tucker, she says he's a friend, so apparently friendship trumps calling out neo-Nazi rhetoric. She even mocked Mehdi Hassan when someone joked about pagers with him. Yet when she is mocked by a satire site, no less, she collapses? The right is turning into the very snowflakes that it used to mock. Well, that's it for this week on Axis of Truth. We'll be back soon with more interviews and more stories from the Middle East. I'm Emily Schrader. Be sure to follow me on social media, Emily K. Schrader or Emily in Tel Aviv. Thank you for watching and see you next week on Axis of Truth.
Well, Israel loses billions of shekels every year, not to war or infrastructure, but to food being thrown away. A new report shows the country has lost more than $57 billion in food value over the last decade alone. Our correspondent, India Naftali, reports on the scale of the crisis and the solutions already underway.
Israelis threw away billions of dollars of food in the last decade. This is especially concerning considering how many families in the country suffer with food insecurity. The new food waste report shows how much money and nutritious food is being lost every single year. But it also shows that the tools to fix the problem already exist. The 10th annual Food Waste and Rescue Report from BDO and Lekit Israel, the country's national food bank, shows Israel has lost about $57 billion in food value over the past decade. The report, prepared with the Ministries of Environmental Protection and Health, warns that food loss remains one of Israel's most expensive problems. However, this year's report does show a positive trend. Israeli consumers are wasting less food, a drop of 13.3% per person. But with population growth and rising living costs, the total volume of waste remains very high. Food waste affects Israel in three major ways.
In 2024 alone, Israel threw away 2.6 million tons of food, worth about $7 billion. That is nearly 40% of the country's entire food production and equal to 1.3% of the national GDP. Socially, it makes life hard for families who already struggle to afford healthy food. The average Israeli family discarded about $2,915 worth of food last year. Meanwhile, 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Health costs associated with food insecurity are even higher, reaching about $1.57 billion a year. These costs include chronic illnesses such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, and other conditions linked to poor nutrition. And environmentally, food waste uses water, land, and energy that cannot be recovered, costing Israel about $1.14 billion annually in lost resources and pollution. But Israel has built a strong foundation for change to reduce food waste in places like restaurants, army bases, farms, or at home. These solutions include expanding food rescue operations in farms and supermarkets, using the Food Donation Act to increase safe donations, and implementing the national plan that sets targets for cutting waste and redirecting surplus food to families in need. Leket has also been working with government ministries, pushing for new laws and helping shape the national plan. They say the next step is to keep the momentum going so these plans turn into real large-scale change, because the level of waste is still far too high. These plans are expected to save billions and support lower and middle-income families.
Leket says Israel already has a scalable system for food rescue. What it needs now, they say, is funding, coordination, and national commitment. Their goal is in Israel, where food isn't thrown away while families go hungry.
Leket Israel is the largest food rescue operation in Israel today. We have the honor of having Leket Israel founder Joseph Gittler and Chen Herzog, the chief economist at BDO, here in our studios to explain what food rescue is and how it can help reduce food waste in Israel. Let's take a look.
A new decade summary report from Leket Israel and BDO shows both the dramatic progress of the last 10 years and the enormous challenges that remain. A decade ago, Israel had no national policy on food waste. Today, after years of pressure from Leket Israel and cooperation with the health and environment ministries, Israel finally has its first national plan to reduce food loss. Still, the cost is staggering: 211 billion shekels in wasted food over 10 years, while 1.5 million Israelis face food insecurity. Joining me now are Joseph Gittler, founder of Leket Israel, and Chen Herzog, chief economist at BDO. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you. Hi.
So, Joseph, let me start with you. Take us back 10 years. There was no policy, no national strategy. Where were we then, and what progress has been made ever since?
So the good news is we now have, as you mentioned, this national policy. There's much more awareness among the population. There's more awareness and interest from the government and different government bodies. And so we're moving in the right direction. The problem is that while Israelis are wasting less, this latest report talks about less waste, going from 300 kilos a year per person to 260 kilos. Our population has grown dramatically since we put out the first report, so the amount of food waste is even greater than it was 10 years ago. Leket's grown over the last 10 years, but we're not close to solving this issue. We need a bigger push, and we need a lot more awareness from the population. I would say also, this has to bother people. And if it doesn't really bother people, and it's a shame because it's money in your pocket. When people waste food, sometimes it's hard to envision the environmental costs. It's hard to see down that stream of what it does when food goes to waste. So we need to talk to people about their pockets. And especially, we even see waste among those who can't afford it, which is an incredible thing to see.
And Chen, even with the progress, the country lost 26 billion shekels in food just last year. What does that say about where we stand today?
So we have to understand really the problem or the magnitude of food waste. 39% of the food consumed and produced in Israel is lost, it's thrown away. And this causes economic problem, environmental problem, food security and health problem. So let's start from the economic problem. At the end of the day, food loss really means that we, as civilians, pay more. And this number of 211 billion shekels over the last decade means that every household in Israel, every family, lost 70,000 shekels in the last decade. And it all translates to standard of living. If we throw the food at home, of course it costs money. But not only the food that we throw at home is costly, because even when food is lost throughout the entire value chain, in the agriculture, in the industry, in the retail shops, it all translates to higher cost of living. And I think we saw this impact, this economic impact, very clearly in the past 2 years during the wartime, because wartime caused more food loss. We couldn't reach many of the fields. There were not enough workers, agricultural workers, to pick up the food, which resulted in costs increasing. So we had more food waste, more expensive fruits and vegetables. And those people with food insecurity, their situation also only worsened. So the economic equation is very simple. Rather than throwing this food away, we should rescue it and feed the needy, and it's a win-win situation.
Now, you, Joseph, have worked with ministries, you pushed for legislation, and helped shape the new national plan. What still needs to be done to turn this momentum into real large-scale change? So
I don't want to get into trouble with the viewers, but we need to make, I'm going to give an example of a change that we need. I love where I live. I love that garbage is picked up 3 times a week. We're a little generous in this country when it comes to some of the things that we do. So, for example, you have countries around the world where to open your garbage can, you need to swipe your credit card, okay? And it's weighed. Now, the most expensive and heaviest things we throw away is actually wasted food. And so we need to change the way we look at garbage. We need to change the way we look at food waste. Food, even with everyone's protest about the cost of living in this country and the cost of food, we don't see much change. People take great pride, which I can understand. Everyone wants to be generous. Everyone wants their tables to be full. And of course, we can't take any chances with not having enough food to feed our population. But like most countries, we're producing way more than we need. And so we need to change things around a little bit in our attitudes towards food and towards waste. And maybe when it becomes a little more expensive, as an example, to waste food, then people will start to take it more seriously.
I understand. It's a very interesting thought. Now, the report links food loss directly to rising produce prices. So I'll ask you, Chen, especially since the war, why is reducing food waste now an economic priority and not just a social one?
So what the report illustrates that food rescue is not only philanthropic work, it's also economics. Because what do? We take food we invested a lot of money, a lot of efforts to produce it, to grow it, and then we take all this value and throw it away. So what actually food rescue does is it takes all this lost value and returns it back to the needy. And the economic equation is that to rescue 1 kilogram of food costs about 1 shekel. But the economic benefit of this food is 3.6 shekels. So we take 1 shekel and we convert it or we enlarge it by 3.6 times.
Joseph, let's close with the bigger picture. What are the real benefits of food rescue for Israel, economically, socially, environmentally? Chen just mentioned some. And after a decade of work, what message do you both want Israelis and policymakers to hear right now?
So what I would like these policymakers and the public to hear is something positive. We see the change. We see the interest. People want to waste less. But we'd like to see the supermarket chains, as an example, offering what we call ugly fruits and vegetables at a discount. The kind of fruits and vegetables we never see, but if they were there and were made more affordable, then people would buy them. As large as Leket has become, we will never be big enough to take care of the need. This is only something the public, with us, and the government can do together.
Well, Joseph and Chen of Leket Israel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about Leket Israel, just scan the QR code on your screens now.
Israel has approved a new plan to bring the remaining members of India's Bnei Menashe community to Israel by 2030. The group identifies as descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, and they are among India's last Jewish communities. Our correspondent, India Naftali, has the details.
Israel's government has now approved a 5-year plan to bring the majority of the remaining Bnei Menashe community from India to Israel. The decision, submitted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Aliyah and Integration Minister Ophir Sofer, will enable about 5,800 community members to make Aliyah by the year 2030. Around 1,200 are expected to arrive by the end of 2026. There are currently an estimated 5,000 Bnei Menashe already living in Israel, most having arrived over the past 2 decades under previous government initiatives. The Bnei Menashe live primarily in the northeastern Indian states of Mizoram and Manipur, within the Kuki-Chin and Mizo communities. They are descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and are considered among India's last remaining Jewish communities. Under the plan, all new arrivals will undergo Orthodox conversion through the chief rabbinate. They will mainly settle in the north of the country, part of a broader effort to rebuild and strengthen the communities of the Galilee region following the war. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the move an important and Zionist decision, saying it will provide a boost to the north and help reunite families long divided between India and Israel. Aliyah Minister Sofer praised the decision as part of a wider wave of immigration in recent years, saying this Aliyah strengthens Israel's resilience, solidarity, and national renewal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the move marks a renewed connection of brothers who have carried the yearning for Zion for generations. A government delegation is set to travel to India within days to begin processing applications. The operation will be coordinated by the Chief Rabbinate, the Conversion Authority, the Population and Immigration Authority, the Foreign Ministry, and the Jewish Agency. The first phase of the plan is budgeted at 90 million shekels through 2026. The funds will cover immigration costs, conversion, housing and absorption centers, Hebrew language programs, and employment support, helping the new arrivals integrate smoothly into their communities in the north.
And so, as Israel approves this landmark plan to bring the entire Bnei Menashe community home by 2030, we are now joined by India Naftali to discuss this issue here in studio. Thanks for joining us, India.
Thank you so much, Sivan.
So let's, to begin, understand, for viewers less familiar with this whole, with this community, who are the Bnei Menashe? What is their story?
So the Bnei Menashe are a Jewish community located in northeast India. They come from the tribe of Manasseh. They were in the land of Israel 2,700 years ago. They were exiled by the Assyrians, and they've been out of the land of Israel ever since. So for generations, they've been keeping Jewish customs and laws, keeping Shabbat, Jewish purity rituals, and that is really their claim to Judaism. They're one of the 10 lost tribes, and they're about a population of 10,000. They're part of India's very small Jewish population.
And now, what does this decision actually mean? How significant is it that Israel has now committed to bringing the entire Bnei Menashe community, roughly 6,000 people, by the end of the decade?
So this is historic, Sivan. I mean, this is the first time that the government has ever approved such a large mass aliyah. If we talk about the aliyah of the Ethiopian Jews, they were brought in several operations and waves. And this framework that's happening with the Bnei Menashe to bring the remaining roughly 6,000 that are in India, it's happening in one go, in one framework. So this is the first time. There's going to be families that have been separated for 20 years who haven't been able to make aliyah, that have been in India, and who are now going to be reunited with the roughly 5,000 Bnei Menashe community members here in Israel. Now, for you to understand, I mentioned in my piece that they're going to have to go through a conversion process, a Orthodox Jewish conversion process. So you might ask yourself, if they're Jewish, why would they have to go through that process?
Right.
Well, the answer is this. So because they've been exiled so long in the diaspora for over 2,000 years, the Judaism they practice isn't exactly the same as rabbinical Judaism, which was created after the destruction of the first temple, and they left right around that time of the destruction of first temple. So the Judaism they practice is from that time era, and as we know, that rabbinical Judaism was created afterwards. So now that we're going to see them. That their Judaism aligns with rabbinical Judaism that is considered halakha here in Israel.
Halakha, Jewish law here in Israel. So to make sure that everyone is aligned.
In the same practice of Judaism.
None of us are really 100% aligned,
That's
but
right.
More or less. All right, so the state delegation is flying to India within days, and the government allocated 90 million shekels for this first phase, covering conversion and housing and Hebrew education and integration. What challenges do you think that the state will face in absorbing such a large wave of immigrants?
Certainly the question of education. A lot of them come from communities where
they don't have traditional education, so coming and finding job placement might be difficult issue. But like you said, 90 million shekels is a huge pledge to make sure that these new members of our society have a smooth landing, and it's going to be invested in hopefully education, definitely housing, and they already have quite a significant community here to welcome them and show them the ropes.
And what are some of the actual community members saying about this big move?
Sivan, I know people who it's been their entire life's work for the past 20 years to bring this piece of the diaspora home to Israel. So for them, this is a completion of their life's dream. I mean, this is just the beginning of a historic moment of really bringing all Jews from across the world home to Israel.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, it will be incredible to see this new wave of Aliyah, of immigration coming to Israel, integrating, absorbing, and joining the Israeli public here in Israel, the Holy Land. Thank you very much, India, Naftali.
Thank you, Sivan.
At ILTV, we're not just reporting the news, we are on a mission. Every story we tell stands for truth, for Zionism, and for Israel. When you subscribe, you're not just buying an app, you're becoming a partner in strengthening Israel's voice around the world. ILTV is factual, direct, and unapologetically pro-Israel. And we need you with us. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to subscribe and stand with Israel. Because this isn't just news, it's a mission.
Step into the story of Israel's heartland with Blessed by Israel, where every purchase connects you to the land, the people, and the promise. Taste the sweetness of the promised land in their delicious honeys, or wear the story of the land close to your heart with the stunning Special Places of the Land necklace. Behind each product is a family, pioneers living in Judea and Samaria, crafting beauty and goodness from the soil of the Bible. When you buy their creations, you're not only receiving something extraordinary, you're investing in Israel's future, helping small businesses thrive and communities grow strong. Join a movement that celebrates faith, resilience, and hope. Visit blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL, that's BLESSISRAEL, at checkout for 10% off on your first order. Be part of strengthening Israel, one purchase at a time.